Welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following episode. My name is Colton Brown, and joining me is Andrew Meadows.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Have you returned this time?
I have returned. Yes.
This is the right time to return, just in case you were wondering, because, well, I mean, I guess if you're a king, it'd be the right time.
If you're a king, yeah. I mean, I didn't know,
You don't want to be presumptuous about, your royalty status or whatever.
Exactly.
Your kingliness, perhaps.
Tinkering with ancestry, and they, well, not to brag, but no, I don't have any royalty. Some Confederate soldiers and shit. But,
hey, that's how it goes, right? Well, when you know it, we are here to conclude our coverage of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And, yeah, of course, we're here to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King to accomplish that. It's been a little while since we talked about the Two Towers. I feel like we did Fellowship and Two Towers in fairly quick succession, and then we took a little bit of a break, had to find the right time to slot the 4.5 hours of Return of the King into our schedule, and now we're finally here. When we're recording this, we're about a week out from Christmas, so who knows what that means for anyone listening to this. Could very well still be Christmas time. It could not be Christmas time because it's a bonus episode, and that's how these things go. We do these as a timed exclusive episode for our supporters on Patreon, and then sometime down the road, the regular listeners get access to it, but they're not the first to do so. So this is the 33rd bonus episode that we're doing on this podcast. I want to say thank you to those of you who are listening to this through Patreon. And if you are listening to this on the regular feed and you're like, yeah, Christmas was like 3 weeks ago, my dude, or whatever, or however long ago it was, I just want to say, hey, it's not too late for you to become a patron as well. If you go to patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat, if you chip in $2 a month, you will get access to bonus episodes like this one, like the bonus episodes that we've been doing for the past few months, and you'll get early access to all of our regular episodes, which is really nice. We've had some lengthy ones lately. We go a few weeks between recording, and then we just dump it all at once, and they take a bit of time to edit, but they go up on Patreon like almost right away. So that's kind of the way to do it if you want your watch review repeat fix, like as soon as possible, as soon as humanly possible. Patreon is the solution for you. So I encourage you to help us out, and we'll help you out with some bonus content and good stuff. So yeah, The Return of the King, man. I mean, it's really, really exciting to be here to round out our long overdue coverage of the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, the Peter Jackson film trilogy. 250 plus episodes in, we're finally getting around to the Lord of the Rings. And I will say, it actually is somewhat fortuitous and in a roundabout way that we're doing this now, like this almost exact date, this exact time of the year and everything. Something inadvertent happened that makes it feel like, maybe this was just meant to be, that maybe we weren't supposed to watch The Return of the King a couple weeks ago when maybe we could have. We waited, and it all kind of just worked out, but we'll get to that. This is the 6th entry in our ongoing series of epic bonus episodes focused on epic films. Obviously, it's the 3rd Lord of the Rings one, but before this, we covered Troy, Gladiator, and Lawrence of Arabia. Hopefully, everyone's had a chance to, take a dive on those because they're fun opportunities for us to just pick a random film that we want to talk about. We're not doing news. We're not doing,
just talking about movies.
The full regular thing. We're just kind of getting into it, talking about movies. This, I will say, I guess with the Lord of the Rings ones, we've been doing a little bit of behind the scenes kind of thing added on top of it, which I think has been fun, and we'll certainly have some more on that front for this one as well. But
mainly just two dudes and some brews. Just
two dudes, some brews. Brews and reviews or whatever. I think that was a working title for the podcast once upon a time. That's a fun fact for everyone right there. We might have said that before, but I have to imagine it's been quite some time since it's been thrown out. So there you go. We're kicking things off with a real nice fun fact for you guys. I do actually have other fun facts, particularly that concern The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Oh, and I should say before I get to that, Anna Mattis is going to be joining us later. She hopped on for the Fellowship of the Ring, could not make it on for the Two Towers, but she's gonna come back and circle back to talking about some of the things that we brought up on the Fellowship episode, and then of course talking about Return of the King, the trilogy as a whole, and everything. But she's gonna be on a bit later, so we're gonna do some other stuff without her, and then we'll bring her in.
All right.
But I have actually 2 fun facts about the Return of the King, if you're up for them.
Let's do it. What do we got?
And the first one, I should say, I actually started giving, and partially through the Fellowship of the Ring bonus episode that we did, and that is, we talked a lot about during the pre-production of this movie how it went through several iterations where you had the Weinsteins, including the convicted sexual assaulter rapist Harvey Weinstein. He was involved as producer for a time. So I actually kind of started to go off about a fact that something that Elijah Wood, who plays Frodo, came out and said fairly recently, a couple of years ago, which is that there's an orc in the Lord of the Rings that is designed to look like Harvey Weinstein, who, and I don't feel bad about making fun of a rapist piece of shit, is not a good-looking man, quite ugly indeed, So as Elijah Wood puts it, they basically made this fucked up looking orc as a fuck you to Harvey Weinstein, because he as we talked about, notoriously meddled with it to the point where he wanted to make one movie for less than $100 million, and I can't find this actually confirmed completely, but everyone seems to agree that the orc in question was the orc Gothmog, who's the one with the fucked up half face and the gimpy arm, who's like the I guess like a general of some sorts and the battle as part of Sauron's forces, and is an ugly fuck. Let's put it that way. So if that was the design that was chosen as the fuck you, then it accomplished exactly what was intended, because goddamn. It's an ugly ass fucking orc. Let's put it that way.
It's an ugly one.
And apparently this was Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd, who played 2 of the other hobbits, who played Merry and Pippin, had actually talked about this previously. And so I think now that they're all just kind of like, oh yeah, we can actually just openly say that Harvey Weinstein sucks, and everyone's like, yeah, he does. Then like they've kind of felt comfortable, 20 years down the line, giving us this info about it. But at the time that this movie came out, Peter Jackson put a somewhat subtle, but maybe not so subtle if you know where to look for it, dig at not just Harvey Weinstein, but his brother Bob.
Made a dig at his brother Bob?
Well, he at Harvey Weinstein's brother Bob. The two
Bob
Weinstein
okay.
brothers. Yes, exactly. Harvey and Bob Weinstein. The end credits of this movie, they do a really nice thing where with each member of the cast that comes up, there's kind of like a sketch, like an illustration of their character, done by Alan Lee, and it's like a really cool thing. And then when you come to the executive producers section, you have 3 names credited. You have Mark Ordesky, whoever the fuck that is, Bob Weinstein, and Harvey Weinstein credited. And in this exact moment, they're not in the movie. They're not going to get a sketch of any characters they played. But in place, there's a man holding a spear up to 2 trolls. Is what you see in that exact moment when the Weinsteins are credited, is 2 big fat trolls being fended off by some other person.
That's incredible.
So,
that's a pretty fun fact.
Not so subtle, but again, subtle enough that they're not ruffling that many feathers by doing this. They can claim innocence if they need to, but we know what was happening there. So that was a little fuck you that they added even back in the day. Well, I guess the orc design was there back in the day too, but I guess the solution is don't be Harvey Weinstein, because you're just a gigantic piece of shit and everyone will treat you as such. And you know what? That's okay. Now, I want to talk about another fun fact that's not Harvey Weinstein related, because it's fun. It's fun to poke fun of a piece of shit, obviously, but I think we could have something even a little bit more fun. And what could be more fun? Who could be more fun to talk about than one Britt McKenzie? Brit, one half of the Flight of the Conchords.
Yes.
Who you might, I don't know if you recognize him or not, but he makes an appearance in 2 of these Lord of the Rings movies. He plays an extra. He played an extra in the Fellowship of the Ring, and he appears in the Rivendell sequence. He plays an elf. And the story goes that basically there was a fan that noticed, Brett in his elf attire. He's very clean shaven. He's got long flowing hair, elf-like and such. They thought, or they said, allegedly, Frodo is great, ... Who is that? Is what they said about this handsome elf played by Brett McKenzie. And basically there was this cult online fan following of this one character, this nameless extra elf in Rivendell, and it turned into this whole thing. There's a fan website that was called figwitlives.net, and what happened is Frodo is great, who was that, was then shortened to the acronym Figwit. And so Peter Jackson caught on to the fact that this guy's got a fucking big fan following, and he thought, let's have fun with this. He brought back Brett McKenzie, during some pickups for shooting The Return of the King, and gave him 2 lines of dialogue. So I think it's a scene with Arwen where he has the dialogue. But yeah, he was brought back specifically to have dialogue, just to give the fans a little bit of fun, tease them a little bit, which is great. Brett McKenzie has been asked about this Figwit obsession. He's called it weird, but he says that he's flattered. And he says it's so hilarious because it's been propelled by so little. I'm famous for doing nothing, which, for us that have, familiarity with Flight of the Conchords, have seen Flight of the Conchords, in fact.
Yes, we have.
Live in concert. Sounds exactly like something Brett McKenzie would say, which is great, which is fantastic. So anyway, Figwit.
That's amazing.
And there's a 57-minute documentary about Figwit, apparently, which I haven't seen.
Jeez.
But that's pretty impressive.
Who would have known? I didn't know Peter Jackson was so fun.
Yeah, he's pretty fun,
I'd say so.
Makes long Beatles documentaries and overlong Hobbit adaptations, too, and all those good things. And
but the Harvey Weinstein things, all that stuff's pretty funny and pretty good. And Figwit, I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of those fun facts. I didn't know. I mean, I know Flight of the Conchords guy. I knew he was in it, but I did not know it was the
lore. You didn't know the lore.
Exactly.
Of Figwit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's a lot of lore. He's got a whole Wikipedia page,
incredible,
complete with picture. So yeah, a few fun facts to kick things off here. This is the triumphant finale of our coverage of the Lord of the Rings. We're going all in. We're going all out. We're throwing everything at the wall to see what works, and hopefully it all does. Hopefully it all works. But before we talk about the movie itself, what we are going to do is round out our the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy section that we started in the Fellowship of the Ring coverage. I think then we talked about basically pre-production, I think, more or less, maybe a little of other things, or I guess it was development and pre-production. Development obviously being a lot of the Weinstein shit, and then finally finding its home with New Line Cinema, and then pre-production would have been a lot of, I guess, getting ready to make the damn thing. When we did the Two Towers, we talked about casting, we talked about the actual filming, and then kind of some of the practical effects that were used. And so now we're going to finish things out, talking about post-production, and then talking about the reception to the trilogy as a whole, to each one individually, I guess, somewhat too. But that's where we're going to do. That's what we're going to do, to finish out this making of section, which I've had fun doing. I've had fun doing some research, and hopefully both you and the listeners are finding it at least somewhat entertaining,
yes.
Educational, a little bit of both, perhaps. I don't know. So I will one last time note, if you like this sort of thing, if you find this sort of thing interesting like I do, definitely owe it to yourself to pick up some of the Blu-rays, or it might be on the 4Ks, I'm not sure, or just like YouTube or whatever. All these, there's so many behind the scenes, special features, documentaries, featurettes that really cover so many of these aspects of the making of this trilogy. It's an epic fucking trilogy, right? That's why we're talking about it. It took thousands upon thousands of people to make it happen, to bring it to life in the way that we have been able to experience it for a couple decades now. So certainly that's one way to kind of learn about it is to go even more in depth with just different aspects of the production. So if you like this sort of thing, seek it out, is what I'd encourage everyone to do. But I want to start talking about the post-production, and I want to start with the editing, the task of editing the 400 days of filming or whatever we talked about on the Two Towers, whatever the actual number was. It was over a year. It was definitely over a year. Where do you even begin? I struggle sometimes to edit this podcast. I'm like, oh God, 4 hours. That's too long. What do I do with this? But can you imagine, I don't know, 400 days of however many hours each day and trying to figure out how that gets cut down into a, I don't know, 3-4 hour kind of project. I mean, truly insane to kind of fathom what would be required of that. A Herculean effort for sure. And so in terms of how they did go about all that stuff, basically the idea initially was Peter Jackson wanted to edit it with one other editor. He wanted to do it himself and this other guy, and he wanted to do everything simultaneously. He wanted to have everything available and then, basically be doing...
Sit down, crank it out. Just
exactly.
Yeah.
I have everything. Let's just, we know how we do have everything we need. Let's make these 3 movies at the same time. They tried that. I don't know how exactly long they tried that for, but there came a point where they said, this is not tenable, this is not going to work, and they made the decision to edit them consecutively, which is to say, we're going to do it one at a time, we're going to do it in order, we're going to do Fellowship, then we're going to do Two Towers, then we're going to do The Return of the King, and they actually ended up bringing on an editor for each film. So there actually is 3 different editors across the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You might think like everything else has so much continuity. You got one director, same writers, same a lot of everything. But editing is kind of one thing where that is not the case. Each film has a different credited editor. There was, I think, one guy. I think the editor of The Return of the King, I think, supervised the other 2, but he didn't actually kind of take the brunt of the responsibilities for actually doing the editing for Fellowship or Two Towers, so, which I think is really interesting because you wouldn't really know that. You wouldn't know that.
They don't feel different.
They feel pretty seamless. I mean, obviously it helps up when that they were made, and shot all together. But yeah, I would have never guessed that. I just would have assumed it was the same editor who spent many years of his life, obviously, in Lord of the Rings universe like everyone else did. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of what happened. And so with editing this, they had the actual figures I'm looking at. They had 1,828 kilometers of film to work from, which translated to our imperial system here is nearly 6 million feet, nearly 6 million literal feet of film, which counted for about 1,110 hours of footage, had to be edited down to 3 movies. And our final extended edition, full everything runtime of the entire trilogy, I think just footage, not including necessarily credits and stuff. I could be wrong. They might include credits. Comes down to about 11 hours and 26 minutes. So 1,000+ hours down to 11.
Jeez.
So, needless to say, obviously multiple takes, but still
they cut it down quite a bit.
The
right.
cutting room floor. They add the, fine tune it, obviously, as you do with any movie, but for something like this, it feels almost more like a more gargantuan task than.
And it wasn't digital either. It was film.
Yeah, I think it was film. Yeah, pretty sure. Back in the day,
so that's
20 plus years ago when they're making this.
That's literal cutting on the floor.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty nuts. Pretty nuts that the amount of effort that would have needed to go into.
Surely they imported it. They had to convert it.
Yeah, they might have had like some sort of digital, workspace to work from. Yeah, probably. I mean, computers were a thing. It's not that old, obviously. So
there was CG and stuff. So yeah.
Right. So, but still, it's a lot. That's a lot at the end of the day. Anyway, you spend it, whether you're doing it by hand, whether you're doing it in a computer. That's a lot of time.
6 million feet. How many miles is that?
I'll let you do the conversion of that. But probably it's over 1,000, I would assume. I mean, if you're talking about 18 kilometers.
1,136 miles.
It's not bad. I don't know if it's quite a cross-country trip or anything like that, but it's you can get across a good chunk of the country with that amount of film if you just
I could get from me to you
in a single strip.
I can get from me to you and actually have some left over.
That's how much. That's how much film there was. You lay it in a straight line between us and
between Dade City, Florida, and Philadelphia.
That's right. So in terms of the things that did kind of to get tinkered around, what Peter Jackson and company have talked about is basically they found the Two Towers to be the most difficult to edit, which is kind of I guess somewhat expected because it's the middle chapter. It doesn't have the clean beginning, middle, or an end in the way that some of the others do, right? And so a lot of what they did is they shot a lot of stuff that was planned for the Two Towers that ultimately ended up getting shifted over to the Return of the King. So 3 examples that are fairly notable, fairly big, include the reforging of Anduril, which is the sword that Aragorn uses. The I guess Isildur's sword that was shattered. That was moved from Two Towers to Return of the King. The entire backstory of Gollum, which is the opening sequence of Return of the King, was originally planned to be in the Two Towers. And then last but not least, the demise of Saruman was originally planned for the Two Towers and then was moved to the Return of the King. And a fun fact about that is Saruman's death is not actually in the theatrical cut of the Return of the King. It was completely excised. So
really,
Saruman is his whereabouts are sort of unaccounted for, I think, in the theatrical cut. I actually don't know how they handle it. I assume they just kind of skip right past it. Maybe the Palantir is already on the ground or something. I'm not really sure. But yeah, Christopher Lee was fucking pissed. Let's put it that way. He was I think he legitimately was fucking angry at Peter Jackson when his when it was released, his death got cut from that theatrical cut. So they did make good so that he could come back for, I think, a scene in The Hobbit or whatever, but still. There's a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the final products, even the extended editions. There was a version where Arwen herself was at Helm's Deep, participating in the battle, leading the elves at Helm's Deep, which did not happen in the Two Towers. There was a version where Aragorn and Sauron actually had a physical fight at the Black Gate in the Return of the King. That did not happen. There's no physical
manifestation
battling form of Sauron. You have the Mouth of Sauron, which is also an extended edition thing. That
guy. Zoom in on this fucking. I told Guppy that's what happens when you don't brush your teeth.
You gotta brush your teeth. You're gonna look like this fucking guy. That's right. And then there were other extended endings for Legolas, Gimli, Éowyn. There were an Éowyn and Faramir wedding, I think, that was apparently shot and not included. Aragorn's death was apparently shot but not included. After living a nice long life or whatever, like an extended epilogue sort of thing was not included for a lot of these characters. And you know what? It's okay. Some of those things didn't need to be in there. I think, they had a lot to work from. They cut a lot from the books. We'll probably talk about that later when Anna comes on. It was a task to just get this to the point where it is, and you always have to. You can't keep everything in. You can't make 3 movies that are 1,000 hours long. Inevitably, things had to get cut. So those are some things that could have been in that didn't make it in. So that's a little bit on the editing. Now, on the visual effects side, we talked a little bit about the practical effects stuff, as I mentioned. But you brought up computers and CGI and stuff, and certainly that's relevant here. There were some fully CGI creatures in this trilogy, but really particularly in the Return of the King, there was a definitely more extensive usage of CGI, particularly so. Some of the creatures that we saw that were fully CGI, fully rendered through computers were the trolls, the Balrog and Moria from Fellowship, all the Ents from the Two Towers, and a little bit here in Return of the King, the Wargs, the Mumakil, which are the big elephants, and then Shelob the spider, fully CGI. And then there's Gollum, right? Gollum's a big fucking deal of how the hell did they do that? Because that was, I can't really think of anything prior to The Lord of the Rings where you had basically a fully motion caps creature brought to life in the way that Gollum or Smeagol was brought to life. There's a really interesting kind of saga of basically how Gollum was brought to life. they brought on Andy Serkis, obviously, because, he's well, as we now know, he's really good at this sort of thing. But originally Gollum was going to be completely CGI, but then they decided, basically based on Serkis's audition, that they would try to incorporate his facial acting into it, and then they would use this kind of motion capture type of technology to allow Andy Serkis to really portray Gollum in a way that these other CGI creatures are, kind of, it's not really the same. And so they built a model for Fellowship of the Ring. There's like a really small glimpse of Gollum that you see, I think, in the very beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring. I think maybe as part of like the prologue sequence. And you can kind of tell that the model of Gollum there is a little bit different than how he actually appears in The Two Towers and in The Return of the King. And that's because basically between movies, they kind of overhauled the model that they used in that first film. So they kind of changed it between movies. 2 and 3 kind of had the same one. They basically shot every scene twice with Andy Serkis there, and like in a mocap suit. They shot it, where he wasn't there, so they kind of have the plates and stuff for the background and everything. And interestingly enough, what they I think they were trying to do was basically have I think like CG shots of Gollum basically placed on top of the ones where he wasn't there, but using the ones where he was there as reference. But what they found is basically that the scenes where he literally wasn't there and people were acting with nothing, they found that the performances were worse, which makes sense because you're interacting with nothing. It's like, if you're playing against a tennis ball, it's like, yeah, all right, well, it's hard to act with a tennis ball.
It's the same reason why fucking James Gunn's brother is dressed up in a raccoon suit.
Right, exactly. It's why he's walking around on knees in a fucking, Green Man suit. It's not for shits and giggles. It's because you want to have physical reference for everyone there, not just obviously for the people that need to paint him out and put Rocket Raccoon in there or whatever. But yeah, basically what they actually really ended up doing was they kept the performances of the scenes where Andy Serkis was actually physically in the scene, and then they would usually paint him out, probably using the versions where he wasn't there, and then they would animate the CG one almost on top of where Andy Serkis was. And obviously the proportions are a little bit different, so they had to use CGI for all of that sort of thing. But yeah, they did a lot of work to bring Gollum to life.
Looks fabulous.
And I think for a creature that's basically fully CG for the most part, other than some brief like practical things here and there, looks pretty good 20 years on.
I think even by today's standards, I think he looks really good. I mean, you can tell the difference.
Looks better than some CGI we see have literally seen this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
And
true. even like within its own universe, you know what I mean? You take Gollum and you compare him to the wargs, for example. The wargs,
right?
They just don't look nearly as good. Or the Ents are another one because they're more humanoid. Ents are more humanoid. And they're based off fucking trees, too. You think you would be able to make those characters look very, I don't know, just as compelling. But they're not. They're not nearly as visually, I guess, deceptive. Like Gollum could almost pass. Like if your TV wasn't 4K and it wasn't 70 inches or 85 inches or whatever, and it wasn't like in your fucking face, you'd probably pass.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, as a malnourished fucking little creature, man, But,
yeah. And then last but not least on this front of visual effects, Weta Workshop developed a software. It's called a simulation computer program called Massive. And they developed this computer software program because they needed it to create automatic battle sequences, because there are a lot of large-scale battles, particularly in Return of the King, with thousands upon thousands of combatants. What they did was basically did this thing so they could have realistic, Dynasty Warriors-esque shit, where it's just a shit ton of people on a screen. But maybe, in instances where they're not literally physically filming all of these people doing this, and they don't have the time or the effort or the ability to individually animate every single little person, every ant-like creature that's going to appear in like a large frame. So they use this program called Massive to basically make this happen. And so, I mean, I don't know how they went about that. I'm sure there's a whole thing probably about that of, what it looks like in terms of, how this software works. But I can tell you that it's a big thing, and it's been used a lot since. They used it, and basically it was developed for the Lord of the Rings, but since the Lord of the Rings came out, it's been used in Avatar, the James Cameron Avatar. It was used in 300. It was used in The Hobbit. Probably no surprises there. Used in Game of Thrones, Black Panther, Aquaman, Avengers Endgame, and those are just some of the examples that I've seen where basically this software has been utilized. So it was
Last
a pretty
of
big
Us,
deal.
Quantumania.
Probably, yeah.
It was used in, so you can actually go to massivesoftware.com.
Okay.
And they have a couple of different products that they sell, which is pretty awesome. You can get an ambient agent, which feels like it says fill a plaza, mall, street cafe with a background activity such as milling around, engaging a conversation, talking on a cell phone. So just like fucking NPCs doing nothing.
It's been developed beyond just big battle sequences. It's just
you have a combat sword agent. You have mayhem agent, which is just pure chaos, which is probably what Last of Us used.
Okay. Zombies.
You have stadiums,
whatnot,
where they just clap and cheer.
Okay, sure.
Then you got cars, which is just cars rolling around. So It's just must just be super high fidelity things with lots of things going on. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I don't know how any of it works, but I can tell you it's probably pretty fucking cool. So anyway, yeah. That brings us to the music of The Lord of the Rings, something we've obviously mentioned, talking about these films already. And I want to give, a little brief glimpse into how the hell did Howard Shore do this shit, because man's crazy. I don't have that much to tell you about other than just saying the techniques and kind of the things that he did. But Howard Shore himself composed, orchestrated, conducted, and produced this entire score for all three of these movies, for the entire trilogy. In total, this is just stuff that's been released. He made over 13 hours of music, which is longer than the movies themselves. If you think about it that way. It's insane, and the man spent nearly 4 years, like all together, working on the scores for these movies. And for reference, a composer usually does about 6 to 8 weeks for any given movie. So think about maybe roughly 2 months for a movie. This guy spent 4 years, creating the music.
He lived in Middle Earth.
This entire world. He lived in fucking Middle Earth. And you know what? We all live in Middle Earth when we hear this music, is really the honest truth of it, because it's so synonymous and iconic. And there's just so much detail and complexity to everything that he did. Some of the things he did is he integrated the actual vocals using Middle Earth languages. There's a lot of vocal components to the score, and a lot of that is really just fully integrating the world itself back into the music. He used different series and styles of instruments for basically each kind of culture. So when you're in Rivendell and you're in Lothlorien and you're hearing Elvish shit, those are distinct from each other, but they're also very distinct from the Shire. They're very distinct from Mordor, which is a bit more brash and abrasive, and drums and all of that stuff. So you have such a varied usage of instruments basically to bring it all to life. And it's honestly just insane. I mean, there's so much. There was a fact I saw, which is basically it has the largest group of leitmotifs for characters, cultures, and places. About 85 to 110 is what the range is quoted as, and it's just these are unique little pieces that just are representative of one thing, and it's really, really just astonishing, to be quite honest. So the score was primarily played by the London Philharmonic Orchestra, which was composed of 93 to about 120 players throughout the recording process. So it's Howard Shore, but obviously he has a lot of talented musicians, certainly bringing his work to life as well. I don't know, man. It's I'm at a loss of words talking about, how much went into the score of these movies, and you listen to any one single track and you immediately feel that. I think it's widely recognized as just one of the best film scores of all time, and for good reason. It won some awards, and we'll get to that shortly, but really just everything about it is such a labor of love that it's really, really quite impressive. And the last thing I want to talk about on the music side of things is a song called Into the West, which is the credits song for The Return of the King, which was performed by Annie Lennox. And there's a little bit of a backstory to it, which is basically that they originally had a different song in place called Frodo's Song, and then Peter Jackson wasn't thrilled about it, and so they basically went to the process. He and Howard Shore and everyone else kind of went to the process of trying to create something different that would feel a bit more appropriate, I guess, more iconic or whatever. And there was this filmmaker, a young Maori New Zealand filmmaker named Cameron Duncan, who was dying from cancer at age 16 years old. His work had kind of impressed Peter Jackson and the rest of the New Zealand crew working on The Lord of the Rings, and they kind of felt inspired by his struggle with cancer, and that actually inspired them to write this song. Fran Walsh, Annie Lennox, and Howard Shore worked together to make this song Into the West, and the first time it was publicly played was when Duncan had died. They played it at his funeral, so it's like a really kind of meanful song with lyrics and everything, and it just, I don't know, something about it just sits right, at the end of this movie. So a little nugget about that as well. So that's the post-production stuff that I have to offer about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I have a couple things to talk about in terms of the reception, but I guess that's really not quite the making of the Lord of the Rings. It's just kind of closing the loop on, like, all right, so they put all of this in the development time. They did all the pre-production, they did the filming, they did the production, they did the post-production, and then bam, what happened next? Like, all right, so no one saw it and everyone fucking was sad, and Harvey Weinstein is like, told you shouldn't have spent, $300 million on this. No, Harvey Weinstein was a fucking moron, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Oh, no, because, did it do good?
It did pretty good. I mean, you might have seen it back in the day. Did you see them all in theaters?
Yes.
Okay. Just curious. Figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
They did exceptionally well. I mean, I don't need to get into a full box office breakdown, but suffice it to say, it was a resounding success. It turned a massive profit for New Line and such. And
massive profit on a movie that cost that much, huh?
That's right. So the budget for the entire trilogy, and this is, thinking roughly 2000 or so, was $281 million. That was the budget of the entire trilogy,
God,
which at the
incredible.
time was a lot of money. These days, not nothing, but for 3 movies of this size and scale, feels pretty low, actually. In the scheme of things. I mean, again, you could do the conversion. I think I saw somewhere that it's closer to like $500 million now. But again, $500 million for all 3 of these movies. Now, if it was just one movie, you'd think, all right, that's pretty ridiculous. But for all 3 of these movies, that still feels like a pretty reasonable, Hollywood type budget for movies like this. But each movie saw better and better returns. Fellowship had almost $1 billion worldwide. Ooh. Two Towers got a little close there too, and then The Return of the King was the one that kind of broke the ceiling with a lot of them. Cracked $1 billion by itself worldwide. Had the biggest domestic take for any of the 3 movies. So in total, the 3 films, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, domestically did $1,038,495,223, and that's just U.S. and Canada.
Wow.
And worldwide, these 3 films brought in, compared to a budget of $281 million, they brought back $3 billion, $3,843,330. So, $3 billion compared to not even $300 million. That's not factoring in marketing. That's not factoring in some other costs, and not all of that goes back in everyone's pockets. But let's just say that these movies made some money.
Talking peanuts,
Exactly. And they made money for good reason. They were very well received critically. All of them have 90+% on Rotten Tomatoes. 8 .0 plus average ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, good cinema scores, good Metacritic scores. People like these fucking movies.
It's amazing that a high fantasy movie.
Yeah, and right. It's a thing that you may not necessarily expect that to be the case for. I think that's really what is noteworthy about it, is a fantasy movie, and a full-on fantasy, unabashed, not afraid to be its own thing. Fantasy is what is bringing in so much money, getting all these accolades and everything, and purely in terms of just awards. And just in terms of awards, I mean, talk about the Oscars. Obviously, the Oscars are kind of like that's like the premier cinema award, the premier film awards is the Oscars. Across the full trilogy, there were a total of 30 Oscar nominations for various categories. And of those 30 nominations, the trilogy brought in 17 wins.
Wow.
So more than 50% success rate for it. Let's see. Both are records. The 30 nominations and the 17 wins are records for any film trilogy, period. The one thing that I find really fascinating, and it almost makes sense because it's kind of an ensemble cast, and so it's kind of tough, is there was only one actor in the entire trilogy that was ever nominated for an Oscar. Do you have any guesses on who it might be?
One actor that may have been nominated for an Oscar.
And
I'm going to say Andy Serkis.
They didn't win. That's a solid guess. It was actually a nomination for Sir Ian McKellen as Gandalf in The Fellowship of the Ring. He was the only actor nominated in the entire trilogy for an Oscar, which is kind of wild.
In The Fellowship.
And The Fellowship, particularly. Yep.
Okay.
But what is of note is that The Return of the King was nominated for 11 Oscars at the 76th Academy Awards, and wouldn't you know it, it won all 11 of them. It swept the awards, bringing in the awards for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. And you know what? I'm not inclined to disagree.
No.
I don't know who else it was nominated that year, who it would have been up against, but, well, I mean,
it was up against Return of the King.
Yeah, Return of the King said, "I will destroy everything in my wake," and so it is one of 3 films that holds 11 Academy Award wins, with the likes of Ben-Hur, 1959, and
also
Titanic.
an epic.
And Titanic.
Also an epic.
Yep. But the epics bring it in. 1997 for Titanic. And it is the second sequel to win the Oscar for Best Picture after The Godfather Part 2. So, so there you have it, man. Pretty crazy right there. And that's just the Oscars. It was nominated for 800 total awards, at least according to Wikipedia, and it won 475 of those. So that's, Golden Globes, Grammys, or whatever. Because Howard Shore won Grammys. He won Oscars, for at least.
But he transcended film accolades.
But yeah, moving on to Grammys and stuff too. So anyway,
wow.
Big deal. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is a big fucking deal, and it was recognized as such. Certainly by the time The Return of the King came out, it's like this is the last time to award and so it just cleaned house, completely swept the Oscars, which is pretty incredible, and rarely seen. I'm not sure that it has been seen since. There you go. The making of, the response and everything, and here we are. We're ready to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King at long last.
20 years later. Is it 20 years later?
Well, that's just right. It is not quite to the date plus 1 day. It is the 20th anniversary of the release of The Return of the King. So I actually finished watching it on the 20th anniversary, which is why I brought it up.
So did I.
It's somewhat fortuitous that we kind of waited, because it's like, holy shit, we fucking watched this movie on the 20th anniversary of its release. How cool is that?
I at least finished it the day of
correct.
the 20th.
I split it. I did disc 1 the day prior, and then I did disc 2, so the second half on the 20th anniversary. But I thought, man, that's perfect. Not how we drew it up at all, but we're going to take credit for it. It's exactly how it drew up. Excuse me.
It's incredible. It can't be more incredible than that.
It's like poetry,
not with it being as long as it is and everything else. I think that's awesome. That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So yes, it came out originally December 17th of 2003. It was written by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson, directed by Peter Jackson, based on The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, being Volume 3 of The Lord of the Rings. It stars the large, extensive cast that we've mostly talked about in the last couple of these episodes, including the likes of Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Andy Serkis, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, John Rhys-Davies, Orlando Bloom, Bernard Hill, Miranda Otto, David Wynnum, Carl Urban, Hugo Weaving, Liv Tyler, Kate Blanchett, John Noble, a new name for you, Ian Holm, Sean Bean, Lawrence McAware, Brad Dourif, and Christopher Lee. The latter two only appearing in the extended editions, I should note, because again, Saruman was cut.
True, yeah.
In the theatrical version. So, in The Return of the King, Gandalf and Aragorn lead the world of men against Sauron's army to draw his gaze from Frodo and Sam as they approach Mount Doom with the One Ring. This is it. This is where it all ends. And I would love to hear full spoilers, everyone, it's a fucking 20-year-old movie, so I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear it from you guys, but we're going to talk full spoilers for The Lord of the Rings. We're going to get into it. And I think it's been at least a little while since you've seen The Return of the King, if your experience with the Two Towers was any indication. So how was it? What'd you think?
As we talked about before, usually I've seen them all before, and I've seen them all multiple times.
Right, but not the first time you've seen this movie, but
for the longest time, for quite a few years, I get through I usually watch Fellowship probably once every year, maybe once every 2 years at the least.
Okay.
But usually that's where I go and that's where I stop. Maybe 3 years ago, we were going to do a full-on a watch-through. We got through the Two Towers, and that's where we stopped. So I haven't seen Return of the King.
Been a while.
Yes, many years. And I don't know if I've necessarily seen the extended cut of...
Okay, interesting.
Yes. So, anyways, starting with Howard Shore. Howard Shore makes the way that he weaves, the way that he picks up on the character's emotions on screen, and the way he weaves the music and like because at this point, and I'm going to go back to the Shire. I praise the Shire and
full circle. Okay.
Yeah. I praise that and Fellowship and the score and everything in Fellowship. And the Concerning of Hobbits is just all so good. And when he brings it back, they're on the side of Mount Doom, and Frodo says he's forgotten the feel of wind and the touch of grass and this and that. And then, when there's a spark of hope and the Concerning of Hobbit comes back around, just the way that he weaves the music into like what the characters are wanting and what they're desiring, and just the motifs. The motifs of the movie are so strong, and it's got to be one of my favorite things, easily. But this movie in particular, with Howard Shore's side, Howard Shore being just the incredible person that he is, I mean, it's got to be one of the best scores ever.
I mean, if you're talking about The Lord of the Rings, any of these movies, and you're not talking about Howard Shore, you're incorrect.
You've missed something.
You've done it wrong. I mean, he is almost the beating heart of these movies. Is just bringing them to life.
It's a good way to put it, really.
Without him, they're good movies, but they're not what they are.
So I watched this. I watched this over the course of mainly 2 days, and I left an hour to watch on Sunday or
the 20th anniversary.
On the 20th anniversary, right? So I watched the most of it on Friday, and Sarah was out and the baby were out. They were, I think they were in. I can't remember where they were at. I think they were in like Sarasota or something. Anyways, I got to listen to this movie very, very, very loud. Sarah came home and asked, what the fuck is your problem? Turn it down. What is going on? Like she walked through the door and she was actively pissed. It was loud. It was good though. It was so good.
Felt it in your bones.
Yeah, like when the fucking the elephants, when the elephants are stomping around, woo, 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 you could feel it. The windows were shaking behind me. I mean, it just the couch was vibrating. It was so epic. It was so awesome. This movie takes a lot of turns and it covers a lot of ground. I mean, it is, and you can't really say that it does it, in a short time span. But I mean, relative to the things that it covers, I guess it does.
At the end of the day, it is 4 hours long, but it is a lot of movie. There's a lot of movie in here.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very dense. Could you have split this movie up? I think you probably could have split this movie up. If you wanted to make 4 movies, I think you had enough content there to probably do it.
At the end of the day, though, this was the extended edition. To be fair, so
I guess you're right. Yeah,
there was.
I don't think you could have cut anything out, though. I thought it was all needed.
Peter Jackson.
Says,
fuck you, Christopher Lee. I'm cutting your whole character out of this movie.
Which is
kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, but it does. If it's tight, maybe what's the best way to put it? I think it's meandering, right? Because it has to be. It kind of just it follows the path that it needs to tell the story. It's not concerned with how long it is. It's not concerned with like the angles at which it goes in order to tell the story. It's not cutting any corners. It's going to cover all the ground. You know what I mean? And it does it. It's very effective. By the end of the movie, you have a bow. I'm not going to say it's a tight bow. It's not, but it's a lofty, big, flamboyant bow. Like the ending's definitely a good point because it covers, and I don't know if it's extended edition or what, but it covers every possible character that we've been involved with.
Well, it's like you get to a point where, spoilers, the ring is destroyed, and there's still probably 30 minutes left in the movie, and really all of that is just, the fallout, the resolution from all of that moment.
Yeah.
And, you spent 10 hours to that point. It feels like it could have ended then and there. But you
don't want it to.
You want to live in this world a little bit longer and enjoy the payoff and enjoy, God, man, some of these characters just go through the ringer in this whole fucking trilogy. So you want them to have kind of a little bit of peace.
Oh, dude, when Aragorn says, when all the hobbits, I get teary-eyed thinking about it when they fucking when they they kneel to the king. Man, and he says,
my friends,
you knew, yeah,
you bow to no one.
And then the whole city bows to the hobbits.
Bows, yeah.
Oh man,
I'm getting chills too.
I lost it. It was so good, and the score was swelling. It was so epic. Oh man, just such a good ending. He got his elvish lady. He's happy. He's got a happy ending.
He's got his crown.
And it almost felt like everybody had a happy ending except Frodo, but he seemed happy that he was sailing away to heaven, I guess. It's, so that's kind of, I guess it's not morbid, but like his
Frodo's
soul
not
life
the same that he was, I think he's irreparably changed from his experiences, the toll that the ring took on him, Yeah. It's a little sad for Frodo. I think certainly compared to the others, feel like they get a bit more of a happy. Like Sam. Sam gets married to Rosie, who he thinks about, has kids, and and gets to finish the story that Frodo's written. But Frodo himself is kind of just he's a little changed. He's a little he's a little different.
Yeah, that's where he's going, right? He's going with like 90-year-old Bilbo.
Yeah, he's going to hang out with Bilbo, at the end of his days. He's going to go to Valinor and, be with the fucking elves that are like, yeah, Middle-earth's, going to die. And, if we stay here too long, the light's going to fade. So we're going to go be immortal elsewhere. Hey, maybe it's just the next great big adventure is what maybe does it look like outside of
I was always under the impression that it was like heaven. Like it's you're, I guess, I mean, life's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyways, what else do we have here? There's a lot to talk about.
There is, yes.
Well,
Well, I mean, yeah.
let's talk about the ghosts.
Okay. Yeah. How do you feel about the Army of the Dead?
So the Army of the Dead was always like a point of contention for me. Like it wasn't always my favorite thing.
Okay. All right.
And anytime, maybe it's, I'm coming back to this as a more mature viewer, because the thing that I'm going to remember is, the things that I'm going to remember now, having watched it, is the Howard Shore motifs and how he brings all the characters full circle with their own songs and the places that they come from. And I'm going to remember that sequence on the fucking hill there with the king and the hobbits. I'm going to remember that.
Sure.
For the longest time though, I only ever remembered the ghosts.
Okay.
I always remembered I don't really care for that. He goes and gets the Army of the Dead and they're green and they like run over everybody, and that's that. It's the whole army gets knocked out by the ghosts. It wasn't my favorite thing, and it's still really not my favorite thing.
Okay. Hasn't changed a whole lot then.
It hasn't changed a whole lot. I think it's interesting. I think they go about it in a good way, and I think it's cool lore. But I just don't think it necessarily, like the mountain of bones that they have to surf out of in order to like get out of the caves. I thought it was just kind of weird and it kind of felt hobbitish in a way.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
But aside from that sequence, I think I really enjoyed everything else about this movie. The very, very beginning with Schmeagol, killing his friend and getting the ring. That ring is fucked up, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got Frodo at the end. He said, "Fuck it. I got it all the way here. I'm gonna keep it."
Yeah, it puts that shit on.
Yeah, he does. And his face looks all like the makeup and everything that he had going on, like the lighting and stuff on his face. He looked like pure fucking evil hobbit.
Gollum 2.0.
Yeah. And it ring's pretty messed up. Also, the mouth of Sauron. What the fuck is that guy?
I'm not really sure. I don't know if he's
like,
just
I don't think I've ever seen that guy before. I've seen him in like memes, but I don't think I've ever seen that guy.
It's the first time we see him in this trilogy anyway. I don't really know. I think this is something that Anna can probably speak to a little bit more, is the representation of Sauron, from what I understand, is a lot more physical in this, and that may not extend to the mouth of Sauron. I don't know if he's like a character in the book or whatever, but I know, Sauron being a literal eye on this tower is not quite what he is. I think in the book he's more of present, but not literally looking at you, sort of thing.
Right.
So I don't know if the mouth is kind of like that too. I don't really know how that works. Does he have, I don't know. Let's.
Is that the way they're in the movie? They're trying to personify these attributes of Sauron, like his sight as a giant,
right? Because he's not like physically himself. He gets obviously fucked up in the prologue that we saw in Fellowship, and he's still able to exist because of the One Ring, but I don't think he's able to really have like a full manifestation of his power. So it kind of gets, I guess, diluted. Like he has the eye, so he can have that omniscience and kind of sees a little bit, but he's limited by that. Maybe the mouth is the same way. It's like, yeah, he could fucking communicate with someone, but that doesn't mean that he himself is whole, I guess. Right. I don't know for sure. I will say I don't. This is one thing where I'm like, I'm not the lore expert in this
He's pretty
area.
Nasty. He was speaking some shit.
He's pretty nasty. I can confirm that myself personally. But
rides over and takes his head clean off. Tired of it. It's like, oh man,
I do not believe him.
What did Gimli say? Or Gimli, he says, I guess diplomatic negotiations are over.
Guess that concludes negotiations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little Sean Connery Gandalf. Throw back there.
What else was there? Oh, when they make the sword, they remake the
They reforge it, yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. That's a chilling moment.
Mm-hmm. Just so many good moments in this movie particularly. I think, I mean, this is somewhat, we'll get to kind of how we personally feel about, the individual movies in the trilogy compared to each other and stuff, towards the end of this episode. But I mean, The Return of the King is the one that gets all those, the accolades. It's the one that wins 11 Academy Awards. Fellowship wins a few. Two Towers wins a few. But for me, I've always thought like, oh man, I don't know, Fellowship kind of just has so many good things in it. But I will say, every time I rewatch The Return of the King, I kind of forget about how much cool shit really is in it. Because, I mean, there's just, it's like you said, there's just a lot packed into it.
There's a lot of moments, yeah. And
it's the resolution, it's the climax, there's so much to it that is just satisfying and like awesome to kind of see. And, there's these big moments, like Helm's Deep is obviously a huge, awesome sequence in the Two Towers. But The Return of the King just really kind of ups the ante with, all the battle sequences, but then the quieter character moments and everything. Obviously, it's not like there's a bunch of big armies at Mount Doom at the end. You have just a couple characters, there. You have Frodo, Sam, and Gollum really are really the only ones there at Mount Doom at the end. And so, you kind of have these diverging paths of where all the characters are. And it's just, I don't know, man. I just think about, there's just so much good stuff in this. There's a lot of really, really good moments in The Return of the King, particularly. That, hey, you might remember The Army of the Dead. Maybe they stand out because it's like, it's not the best. And I don't disagree. I don't think it's the coolest thing. I think it's one of those things that feels a little bit like an ass pull, right? It's kind of just like, oh, well, these odds are so against us. What could we possibly do to defeat, the armies of Sauron? Oh, well, there's this Army of the Dead. Only the king. They will listen to the King of Gondor, and they will fight for him and then be released. And it's like, okay, well, that's awfully convenient, sort of thing. But I will say I do enjoy the moments of the army just running roughshod through. Sauron's
it's like
forces.
a wave.
I think that's satisfying. Yeah. That's pretty cool. And even the moment of, the king or whatever going up to Aragorn and just being like, I ain't fucking listening to you, bitch. And then Aragorn blocks it. It was like, all right, that's pretty cool. That was a pretty cool moment in and of itself. But when I think about the things that are like, that stand out, like there's moments like the lighting of the beacons, fucking cool. Just the sequence of that. Yeah. Is so awesome. I think if you're talking about
guy, the fucking I can't believe I forgot about
steward,
that guy.
The steward
of Gondor. Yeah. Oh, so
Thor.
I have to. Do I have my phone?
Do you have any tomatoes that you can eat and pop very loudly?
So I text Steven. Steven, like Anna, he's got all the books. He's super deep.
He knows
into
a thing or two. Yeah.
Yes. I said, also the steward of Gondor is a real asshole. He says, Denethor is not having a good time. You got to give him a break. He knows his country is doomed to fall. His eldest son just died, and this upstart from the north is coming to take the seat that has been in trust of his family for 500 plus years. I said, well, he could learn some table manners and at least not eat tomatoes the way he does. So fucking popping tomatoes and shit. Sing me a song, pop. Fucking tomatoes and shit all over his face. What a dick. Sing me a song, Hobbit. Like fucking munch on this tomato. I hate that guy. He does a very good job of being. Yeah, he's not dead. Fucking lights him on fire.
I like how every time like Gandalf has an opportunity, just fucking whacks him. Just whacks him, knocks him out. He fucking sets him on fire, basically.
Yeah, he does.
Like, well, so ends Denethor or whatever, It's just like, yeah, good riddance. Jump off that cliff, my dude. Jump off it.
He does whack him. He whacks a lot of people with the stick in this movie.
That's true. He likes to whack people with sticks. That's a good.
He whacks Pep. Was Pippin with him or was the other one with him? Mary.
It's
Mary or Pippin.
I think it's Pippin that's with him. And
Pippin falls to his knees. Your son, I am in your favor, or I'll be your servant. He fucking get up. Pow! Kicks him with the.
Yeah. Don't. In fact, it's best if you don't say anything. Just immediately says something. God damn it, Pippin.
He's always saying something. Pippin is. He grabs the ball too. Is that this one? I think it is, right?
Yep. He grabs the Palantir and curiosity killed the cat or whatever.
It almost fucked. Yeah, it almost got him.
Although it sort of worked out because it's what drove him to Minas Tirith in the first place. So everything happens for a reason or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of good moments in this movie. Really you forget which one. They kind of blend together in a way.
A little bit, right? I think Fellowship. I think for the both of us, probably by the nature of it being the first one we've seen, enough times.
We know where that one
is
ends.
Kind of distinct and iconic on its own. Two Towers. I'm like, yeah, trees. The trees walking and Helm's Deep. And
yeah,
even looking back, having seen it a month ago, I'm like, yeah, there's other stuff in it, I'm sure, but that's kind of where my brain.
I think
goes.
of Worm Tongue. Think of him.
Worm Tongue for sure. That's a good point too. Oh yeah, I do think about Theoden and him being all fucked up and decrepit and under I guess Saruman's influence at that point. There's a lot of Saruman, I guess, in the Two Towers. That's kind of his movie to shine and be evil and whatnot.
Yeah, he does. He does a pretty good job in this.
This one's there's just a lot. And
by nature of editing, to the praise of the editors, they do feel. I know where Fellowship ends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what happens in the middle and to the end, it's kind of indistinguishable. You know what I mean? You could play them back to back to back. You could play them back to back, at least middle of the Two Towers and Return of the King, and have one pretty cohesive thing.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot here. There's Shelob. There's the spider. Frodo gets put into his
look nasty as fuck too. He looked gross.
His nasty little condom thing.
Frodo.
Yeah. So there's that. What else is there in this
pillow
movie?
Fight at the end? The fucking pillow fight.
It's a bit goofy.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that the spoof online?
Gandalf, Gimli.
And then Gandalf's fucking.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's really not that far off from the actual scene.
It's very
when you
weird
think about it.
It's real weird. It's just so happy, I guess.
Right. It's supposed to be happy, but it definitely comes off as pretty fucking goofy. In a way that, a lot of the movie, even when it is trying to be silly and fun, like Gandalf whacking people with a stick, doesn't come off the same way, or it was just like, all right. And I think it's because it goes for a hair too long, because it's like a comical, like, every character has to come through the door kind of moment. It's like 3 minutes of it. And it's like, all right, come on. I get it, but it's a little overlong. For a movie that is obviously quite lengthy, that sequence is kind of just like, all right, okay, all right, all right. But I was gonna say something else. I can't remember where I was going with it, but you distracted me. You distracted me thinking about that scene.
Fucking pillow fight.
Aragorn. I don't know. I don't know if this is where I was going, but I think the design of Minas Tirith is very cool. It's one of those things that's always stood out to me. Is the design of the city? I think is very, very neat.
Minas Tirith. Which one's Minas Tirith? I'm sorry.
That's the capital of Gondor. It's basically where outside of the gate is where the big battle happens. That's where they're defending, where it gets breached with Grond, the big wolf fucking thing breaking through the gate. It's where the big battle happens in this movie. The original big battle where the army with the dead sweeps through. There's the big moment where the Rohirrim come through. You get the epic theme coming in with the Rohirrim, the horse lords and stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, that first moment when the horse lords show up is more epic to me than the Army of the Dead. Like when they're coming through and they just fucking run through, the orcs and Uruk-hai or whatever. It was just awesome.
So Gondor's the city where the fucking asshole runs off, right?
Correct. Yes, that's Minas Tirith, which is the capital of Gondor, which is like the
realm.
Region.
Oh, well, okay, gotcha. Okay, okay, I understand.
Yep. How about the I think cool design? Witch King of Angmar. I think that's a cool fucking design right there.
King of Angmar. Which one is he?
the Witch King. It's the Nazgul, the ring.
Oh
wraith,
yeah, he
helmet
gets crowned
on
and yeah,
wyvern or whatever.
Yeah.
And the moment of Aowen, helmet off. I am no man. Just through. I got chills. I got
it's
chills
awesome.
watching that.
It's very good.
It's so good. I mean, she gets fucked up. Her arm's fucking broken as shit. She's got some issues to deal with, but I don't know. Everything about this is just like...
but she picks up Miri, it's got to be Miri, because Pippin's...
Yeah, it's Mary. Mm-hmm.
Mary. And they ride for days. They just ride for days on the horse to come in and save the day. It's pretty epic.
I mean, so much about it is, the courage of the least likely people stepping up to fight alongside the people who you would expect. I mean, you expect Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas and company to do what they're supposed to do. But these four hobbits, man, you have Frodo, Sam obviously stepping up. Sam in a big way, because there's a whole thing with Sam getting, Gollum manages to frame Sam, and Frodo says, "Fuck off, Sam."
Oh my God.
Sam doesn't give up.
That was just straight up. I was sitting there crying with Sam, dude. Especially when he's like, "No, Sam," and Sam just kind of like cowers down and like sulks up in the corner.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's gut wrenching, right? And it's the Gollum's just being a little sniveling piece of shit. What does he say? Smeagol promised. Smeagol lied. Whatever he said.
Yeah.
That was good. But yeah, those two obviously having like kind of the most important thing. Like if they don't destroy the One Ring, all of this is for naught. You know what I mean? But even Pippin, the shit that he is, the shit that he remains, still, kind of does enough to save Faramir, and set some things in motion. But Mary's, says, I know I'm not, as tall as everyone else, or, I'm just a hobbit, but why can't I fight? Why can't I, fight alongside everyone else? Picks up the sword and Eowyn is kind of the same way. It's like, oh, women and children, we gotta, you gotta go fucking get hidden in the back so they can't get to you. You're not capable of doing anything. She just fucking suits up, puts on a helmet. No one recognizes her. It's fine. And, when she defeats, the fucking, the big bad Nazgul, it's just, I don't know. It's just something about it is so cool to see everyone step up to the plate like that. The world depends on it. This is literally world-ending shit. Sauron takes over. Like, it's like, your fucking life is over. You're going to die. So, having the courage to kind of step up and fight and, protect others and save everyone. It's really awesome and like an awe-inspiring to see. So
yeah,
it's just something that stands out, about all of these characters is everyone just doing their part is really neat.
It's, They when they return to the Shire, they pass by that grumpy old man that's like constantly sweeping his porch. Mm-hmm. It's like, dude, you have no idea the things that we have endured to like preserve your way of life.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just so awesome. The story, like the simple concept of the story, down to its most bare bones. It's told so well, right? I mean, you can think of probably a dozen movies that tell the same story of like an unlikely hero, against impossible odds.
Yeah.
But this
none are as epic as this. For this reason or that reason, like none just can quite live up to this.
It's a symphony of things. You know what I mean? It's so many moving pieces. It's all the costumes. It's all the music. It's all the acting. It's all the accomplishments with CG. Like everybody is all hands on deck, and they 100% believe in this project, and they fucking crushed it, dude. It's
totally. I mean, it really is the perfect storm, and again, we'll get to comparing the films to one another, but I think viewing them as a whole, man, what a journey it is. I mean, just because from
It's an
that
epic
idea,
journey.
like
It's
you know, from those serene moments of fireworks going off in the Shire, you know, and everyone's just kind of happy-go-lucky, has no idea what's coming, to you know, everything at Mount Doom, where, like, I even just looking at Frodo and Sam, their lips are all cracked and everyone's just nasty looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's all fucked up and, you know, barely conscious and has no, like, they're running on fumes, you know, and just seeing the full journey for everyone kind of coming into their own. Like, obviously the hobbits is a big thing, you know, and that's why they bow to no one. But the others too, I mean, you know, all kind of earn their keep. I mean, Aragorn's journey from Ranger to King is really, really cool to see. And
yeah.
everyone in the Fellowship and beyond just kind of has a really important role to play. And you know,
The elves finding their faith in men again, you know?
And men, you know, men finding their trust in each other, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
Two Towers is really kind of bringing Rohan to strength, you know, getting outside of the grasp of Saruman. Here, you know, Gondor is under this ineffective fucking insane asshole, you know, and it's about inspiring the might of these people of Gondor. That's just, it's awesome. It's, at the end of the day, it's just awesome.
Yeah, so all of it. Viewing it in one thing, you know, but this movie more so than I think than others is definitely it's like a quilt of major moments.
Definitely. Yeah, totally. You know, and I think we've probably forgotten one or two, but I think we've covered a lot of it. It's just, I don't know. I mean, it's an epic movie, obviously, but it's just, I think just it's because it's the completion of the journey, because it's the completion of these arcs. That is what makes it so satisfying to watch, is just seeing all of these payoffs, you know, for these characters that you fall in love with, you know, and are rooting for, and like it's almost like a thing where it's like obviously Sauron is fucking evil as shit, and like no one's rooting for Sauron, but he's just kind of a nebulous like entity that it's just like, you know, he's just the force of evil that needs to be driven back and defeated. You know, it's not so much like I want the bad guy to lose. It's I want these good guys to win. I want them, you know, to protect their way of life. I want men and elves and dwarves and, you know, everyone to kind of just be able to coexist peacefully without the threat of Mordor, you know, just always kind of lurking, you know, this fucking big volcano, black and red smoke and ash, you know, flying around, sort of hellscape to kind of be what it is, you know, for the future of Middle Earth. It's and
in order for it to get there, it's such a impossible task, because so many people, like, they're not holding a ring, you know what I mean? They're not holding the thing, you know, but like,
right.
In order for, you know, not Rohan, in order for Gondor to be liberated, okay, you got to put the leader, the king of Rohan, has to set aside his grievances and answer the call. You know what I mean?
Rohan will answer.
Yeah, and not only that, but Gondor doesn't even want to ask.
Right.
You know,
and they wouldn't ask were it not for some intervention from.
That's right.
There you go. That's something that Pippin did was you know, like starting the lighting of the beacons. Probably had a little help getting up there or whatever, but you know,
whatever.
Without that, maybe the fate of Middle Earth is completely different. You know? And Denethor is still dead, just in a different way, probably. But
you know, so many things have to happen. So many people have to, you know, traverse their own sort of, you know, journey and whatnot in order to make it happen. And it's an incredible journey for all the characters. I mean, naturally, you kind of, you know, it's a story told by, as we learn, The Lord of the Rings is written and told by Frodo. So naturally you're going to, you know, center on his character, but it's a journey for everybody involved, you know? And like I said, this movie, more so than all the movies, is definitely it's a collection of moments, big moments.
Right, and it's paying off everything that's been set up.
That's right.
That's what you want your big finale, your third chapter to do, is make the hours that you spent getting to this point worth it, and it really is. I mean, I think it's tough to compare this to, I mean, it's almost, I don't know. Two Towers has that middle chapter thing obviously going on, where it is very much about handing it off, taking the reins from Fellowship and handing it off to the Return of the King. The Return of the King it's the benefactor of the fact that, like, you see everything kind of end, and you get the satisfaction of the ring is destroyed, and what does that mean? And Sauron is defeated, and these characters get to live and to be happy and to do their things. But beyond that, before that, you get just the satisfying moments of, like, victories and battles and men coming together and men and other races coming together. Like, there's just so much payoff to everything that it makes it feel really satisfying. And then you go all the way back to Fellowship, and it's just like, yeah, but isn't it nice when things were simpler? You know what I mean? Like, there's something about Fellowship where it's just like, it's just so beautiful, to see, like, this is what the world kind of is and should be, and it's what they're fighting for is to preserve what you see in the Fellowship, to preserve that Shire, where it's just like, I just want to live here. I don't want to live in the Return of the King world. Fuck no, it's horrible.
No.
It's horrible shit all the time. Like, I don't, and obviously good things are happening, but people are dying. Theoden dies, and when people are getting fucked up, and just huge battles, epic battles, and stuff like that. But it's all because you want what life should be, So, yeah, I don't know. Each of them really just offers their own thing in service of the whole, which is obviously why it's a trilogy. It builds to the whole. But man, as a whole thing, it's just awesome.
It was, and that's why I think the motifs are so powerful, because by that, like, when they're reminiscing about the Shire, you can't like, at that moment you can't think of the Shire. Look at what they're like. I can't remember it, but then the music comes in. You know what I mean? And so good, so good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for me, just the last thing I'm going to say is, because I don't know that I've really said. I've kind of done it in reverse order. I went to a lot of the big moments. This is incredible filmmaking. I mean, to kind of just put all of these things together. Hey, there's a reason this thing won, Oscars for visual effects, because they're incredible. They hold up, 2 decades later, basically. The performances are incredible. Although I guess it wasn't nominated for any acting. It could have been. I think the problem is there's too many fucking characters. You can't pick one person to nominate, because it's such an ensemble cast that, like, everyone they're an important cog in what makes this whole thing work.
I did not nominate Samwise.
Yeah. Is that who your pick would be? If you're going to pick one actor to nominate,
I think Andy Serkis is definitely transformative, and
right. I feel like, I don't know if we've still even have we had a mocap performance nominated to this day? I mean, it would have been, like, trailblazing 20 years ago.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm not sure. But Andy Serkis would have been deserving of it. Like you said, it would have been trailblazing. We'd never seen anything quite like that before. Yeah. But if it's got to be, if it's got to be a live action guy, I think in this movie, Samwise takes the cake.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a good call, because he carries so much of the emotional weight of this movie and the trilogy as a whole. And yeah, I mean, without Sam, the One Ring does not get destroyed.
No,
suffice it to say, right?
No, it's the love and support of Samwise that gets it done. It overpowers the evil and shit. Oh, so right. Good.
So good. It's really good. But yeah, just love. I love the design of everything. I love the score. I love everything about it. I mean, it's just a perfect confluence of things to make this movie as fucking incredible as it is. Costumes are incredible. The editing is very well done, even though it's 4 hours. I gotta say, it feels long because it is long. I wasn't bored. I was never bored with this movie.
No, it's got no filler.
And it's really well directed, and just we talked so much about those character beats. This is it's a really, really well done story. Of all this. Like I said, there's a reason it won all those things at the Oscars, and many, many other awards beyond that is because there's just so much that went into this and that is felt on screen that stands out. Man, yeah, The Return of the King is just it's a damn good movie. It's a damn good movie. And there's, I think, an unfortunate trend where trilogies kind of peter out by the end. They never quite fully seem to stick the landing. So I think, if nothing else, Return of the King's got to be one of the best, third entries or final entries in a trilogy. Period. I can't think of anything that might come close to it. Literally, it's the opposite thing where it's just the first two were better in some ways, and Star Wars even. I think this is better than Star Wars. This is a stronger finale than Return of the Jedi is. I don't know. I can't think of anything that really even comes close in terms of just sticking the landing in such an emphatic way. So, yeah.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, do you think that you're out of thoughts on The Return of the King? Do you think maybe this would be a good time to bring in Anna Mattis so she can spice things up, bring some thoughts of her own, talking about Return of the King and some other Lord of the Rings things before we totally wrap up our coverage here?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me see if I can track her down and get her in.
All right.
I found her. Anna Mattis is here.
Whoa!
To talk more about the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, what do you got, Anna? What do you think about Lord of the Rings?
Just in general. Are you a fan? Would you say that you're a fan?
Big fucking question.
Yeah, you weren't ready for that sort of hard-hitting journalism, were you? No, I didn't think so.
Jumping right from Divorce Discovery into Lord of the Rings. I'm having a little whiplash right now. Give me a minute. Jesus. What do I think of Lord of the Rings? Are we talking about Lord of the Rings as a whole? I thought we were just talking about Return of the King.
It's an open-ended question.
Lied to.
Yes, we are specifically talking about the Return of the King, and then maybe we can pull it back and go a little bit more broad, talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Lord of the Rings as a whole, and all that good stuff. Why don't we start with Return of the King? We'll start with some small potatoes, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. What do you think about the Return of the King?
Colton never doesn't quote that, and it's annoying because also it's not from the Return of the King.
Well, it's not, but I don't know if I said it in the Two Towers episode. I might have. I can't specifically recall.
I think you did.
Every time we have.
You know what?
Every time someone says the word potatoes or taters or tater tots.
What's taters?
Taters?
What's taters, Precious?
That's what he does. Every
I didn't manage to say it in the Two Towers episode, so it's going to find its way in here.
Okay.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
Yes. That's a good one too.
Anyway, yes, The Return of the King. What do you think? What do you think about The Return of the King as a film, as the capper to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and all that?
I don't see, and I feel like this gets into you're asking me ranking type things. But
we will get there. All right, just start with I keep overcomplicating the question.
Yeah, you do.
The Return of the King.
Thoughts?
Question mark. Question mark.
Yeah, no, I think that Return of the King is obviously it's the one that won the Academy Award. It's a great film. I think in a lot of ways the same way that you have to, kind of view all of Lord of the Rings in terms of books is it's one ginormous book. Sometimes that's kind of how I view the movies, especially when we're talking about the extended versions, because it really is just wrapping up the stories, and to me, it's not really a standalone film. Although I suppose Rankin and Bass would like to differ. I think that it has, for me, moments that are cringy. I hate how long we spend with Shelob, especially having it happen halfway through Return of the King when it literally happens at the end of the Two Towers book. in the Return of the King, I think kind of in the books, a bigger focus is the journey through Mordor. And I think in the movie, it just is really more about making it there and not as much about like the 2 weeks or whatever that they spend, actually going through Mordor. And obviously everything is sped up for the movie and all of that. But I also think that this has some of the most, triumphant moments and these kind of chill-inducing moments, I think. The Rohirrim arriving at Pelennor Fields and that music and Theoden's speech and all of that, I think it's just.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the epic speeches because Theoden gives an epic speech and then Aragorn does too.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call it Aragorn's epic. That man turned into a Southerner for like a hot second. He forgot what accent he was doing.
It is not this day.
Come forth!
Come forth! That's true.
The Lord of the Black Land, come forth!
Think about that.
I don't know if that's part of the speech. I feel like that's before the speech.
I mean, yeah, but then he gives a speech and he continues. I don't know what was going on with Viggo that day.
He changed his hair and then he was a brand new man.
Forgot. Yeah, they gave him a different wig. They were busy giving his wig to Tolkien's great-great-grandson or whatever the hell. So yeah, I mean, I do think that Aragorn's speech is fine, but Theoden's is great. Theoden's is epic. I think the delivery of it's fantastic. I think that moment, I think most of those words are taken word for word from the fucking page.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I just think that's like the most epic moment when they appear and then when they, race in. I think that is pretty epic. And then I think also the Eagles are coming. It's just,
Didn't talk about that either.
That's such a huge moment for both the terms of like the Deus Ex Machina of like Sam and Frodo are gonna survive, they're gonna live, and then also like I love I don't think there's any truth to it, but I really like the fan theory that when that Gandalf was protecting his plans for getting to Mordor because he didn't want Saruman to read his mind and to see. He didn't want to give it up, or if someone turned on them, so he was holding it close to the vest. And that when he's about to fall in Moria, when he yells, "Fly, you fools!" he's trying to tell Aragorn, "The eagles, use the eagles to fly into Mordor." like I love that fan theory because it's like silly, but also like kind of very Gandalf. I don't think that's what Tolkien intended, but that's one of my favorite fan theories because it's just like, yeah, really convenient, isn't it? That the Eagles do show up at the end. And classic trope, Deus Ex Machina is,
I feel like we talked about the Army of the Dead kind of feeling that way to some extent too.
It's very different in the books, and I feel like this is a little, I'm like the ink to film correspondent sometimes.
Pretty much.
But in the books, it's obviously quite different. Denethor is not, I don't know, he's preparing for war. Like, he's not doing nothing.
Seems like he fucking eats tomatoes, yeah.
Right. But I was quoting Gandalf there in case someone picked up on it. Okay. For seen and done nothing.
Okay.
But like when they arrive, all of the women and children have been emptied out of the city and they've been sent south, like to the bay or whatever, like to the water, where it's safer. And all of these different allies of Gondor are coming into the city. So like, the Prince of Dol Amroth, that's down by the ocean, and like a few others are like. There's like this really fat guy who comes in on a wagon. I forget what his name is. Jesus. But like there's all these different like troops coming into the city. And so like the city is very much like there are no women and children. There are some children like runners, but it's very much like being fortified for battle, being fortified for siege, it's being prepared for the battle. It's not just like chilling and like hoping for the best. So I think that's whatever. That's, I think, to me, makes for a very different context. And I think it, in some ways, obviously, like the filmmakers were trying to add this tension and this, higher stakes of like the woman cradling the baby, but also it's like, this is fucking stupid. Like, Gondor is not as great as it once was, but the whole like mythology essentially of like Denethor and Faramir and Boromir is that even though it's been diluted, like the blood of Numenor runs through them, and like particularly Faramir is like supposed to be seen as like he looks like a Numenorian, like he's, you know, whatever, like this is still a great city, like they're still smart, they're not fucking idiots, which I think the movie kind of makes them seem like fucking idiots. And the irony, of course, is that in the books, one of the only named female characters, because there are not many, there are 6.
Wow.
6? I think 6. But one of the only named female characters who also has a speaking part is completely cut from the films. And she has like a, you know, she's also made out to be kind of annoying at parts, but she's someone who like sees Aragorn as the king, who also helps in the Houses of Healing. Like, they really don't talk about it in the movie, which is funny because they talk about it so much in Fellowship, but like what finally cures Mary and Eowyn, which by the way, it's not her broken arm from the shield, like that's just a fucking broken arm. It's the arm that stabs the Witch King that's like killing her. What cures that is Kingsfoil. And the people in Gondor are just like, oh, it's just a weed. And Aragorn comes in and is like, in the hands, and that's when Ioreth says, you know, in the hands of the king, you know, it heals or whatever.
Oh.
Which is a really cool thing that I like.
You don't get any of that magic here.
Correct. We don't get any of that. And even the Houses of Healing, you know, that's cut from the theatrical for the most part, I think, if not all.
I mean,
of it.
Even in the extended, it's like
it's nothing.
Barely.
It's like,
you,
we get a song.
You get a longing look between Faramir and Eowyn, and like, oh, I guess they love each other now.
Yeah, which is also wild because in the books, Eowyn's like, get the fuck away from me. Like, and he has to like, but then they start walking, and like after weeks and weeks, you know, and more time passes, and I get it. But yeah, so I think just the state of Minas Tirith is quite different in the books, and so it's just a very
they seem already defeated in this in the movie. It seems like a city that's just take us where.
Given up. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think also there's like a weird, and part of this is just, it's storytelling. That map has been condensed so fucking much in terms of like it being able to just like, you know, Mordor's a stone's throw away from Minas Tirith, and like that's not really how that works.
They're like right across the street, like they were close.
Yeah,
right. Like the Pelennor fields in this are just like empty fields leading up to the city that like it's there for battle. And like in the books, like there are homes and farms, and there's an outwall that, you know, is used for defense. And it's just a very different setting, and you know, kind of changes that battle, because obviously that battle is, you know, the big moment. And yeah, the Deus Ex Machina of the dead army. I mean, in the books, the army of the dead doesn't even go to Minas Tirith.
Okay. That's a change then.
Yeah, it's they stop those armies from coming up. They're not just like pirates. There's like a full fucking armed force down south, and they stop them, and then they go to the city, but they don't bring the army of the dead with them. It's very different. And also like Aragorn, like it's not just the three hunters again. It's Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Elrond's sons, and like a bunch of rangers from the north. Like it's a bigger group.
It's a more of an assembly. Yeah.
Yes. And I think also by Return of the King. So like, you know how Aragorn does this whole like thing with the Palantir and like talks to Sauron and all that.
Yeah.
In the books, I'm pretty sure that happens at Helm's Deep. So like by Return of the King in the books, like he's embraced it. Like he's like, I'm gonna be a leader, I'm gonna go there, but I'm not gonna go into the city until I'm invited. Like I'm gonna respect the steward, you know, all that. So it's just like a very different
So he has a sword by Helm's Deep too.
Motherfucker has the sword when he leaves Rivendell in the books.
Oh.
And he names it Flame of the West.
Oh, see, I think that's pretty epic when he can leave Rivendell feeling like.
Yeah, no, he intends to go to Gondor with Boromir. And maybe not
city,
necessarily
right.
necessarily reclaim it, but like to go back there because he hasn't been in a long time. It's very different. The thing that's brought to him by the elves, it's brought by the sons of Elrond, not Elrond himself, is a sigil that Arwen has sewn, whatever. And I think she does it with mithril. Like, I think it's shimmery and stuff. And I think they finally unfurl it like at this big old rock where they like summon the army of the dead. But like when they go there, they're like in a town or like just next to a town, and like there's lots of people around and stuff. So it's just very different. I think weirdly enough, the world that Peter Jackson has created is very, and I get it because I think in part this is like showing the difference between hobbits, you know, small towns, villages, whatever, and then like Bree, bigger towns, and then these cities. He kind of just gets rid of like all the rural folks.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I guess there's some in Rohan, but like he makes it a very metropolitan world, and it's really not in the books. So like Gondor is more than Minas Tirith.
Sure.
Which the movies would make you think that the entirety of the Kingdom of Gondor.
Well, that was my confusion. I was talking to Colton. I'm like, Minas Tirith. I don't know what's Minas Tirith. I know Gondor.
Oh, they're one and the same, effectively, I guess.
In the movies, yeah, I suppose.
But Gondor is
Osgiliath part of Gondor as well?
Yes.
I guess it's more Two Towers, to be fair, but
yeah. Well, and they mention Carandros, which is a whole fucking city, but they don't actually show it.
Unimportant.
Yeah,
irrelevant.
Honestly. There's like a whole force doing shit there. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's very different. I think it is a good movie. I don't know that it's a good adaptation.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense that a lot has changed.
Fellowship, the changes they make, I feel really good about.
That's what I was going to ask is, how does it compare as an adaptation to its predecessors? Like, obviously, we know just from things that you've talked about and things that I heard about from you while we were watching it, there's a lot of stuff from the Two Towers, the book, that ends up in The Return of the King, the movie.
And then the result of that is that The Return of the King tries to cram too much fucking shit in. And a lot of stuff is shortened because, I mean, there's so much. I mean, the opening of Return of the King is them going, I mean, so like the opening of the movie, Return of the King, where they go to Isengard.
Yeah.
That shit happens in the Two Towers.
Yeah.
Two Towers ends with Gandalf and Pippin going to Minas Tirith.
Okay.
And here, that's like a third of the way through the movie. And then again, like, for Frodo and Sam, it ends with the orcs taking him into the tower and Sam realizing he's alive. That happens here more than halfway through the movie.
Mm.
So it's just, it creates for very different pacing. And yeah, I think more so than watching the other two movies, watching this one like made me want to go and read the book because the book is so much better.
Mm.
And I mean, I know we'll get into it, but like this is why I do think that Fellowship is the best.
I think Fellowship's I think the change is required for, I mean, I haven't read any of the books, but I think just because of the nature of Fellowship, I think you can get away with a lot more because of the subtle nature of everything in Fellowship. And I think that's what makes Fellowship such a good movie too. It's slow paced and it sets the groundwork in a really efficient way, and it's not concerned.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem confirmed.
One, basically. I mean, the only thing they really change is like they condensed 17 years into 6 months, and they totally cut out the old forest and Tom
Bombadil.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, where are the Tooks from? Tookborough?
The Shire.
Is that what it is? Like he moves there, so Frodo like
I'll go with the
moves
Shire
there.
as well.
He like he has a whole move. He doesn't just like run away from home. He moves there. And so they cut that out, which is fine. Like the pacing still works, but yeah, it just kind of cuts it down. But yes, I think I think Return is also a weird one for me because like the first time I watched it, I think it was a really. I think I talked about this maybe in the earlier one, but I watched them all, on these DVDs on the portable DVD player in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And we got home, and I had, like, I don't know, I think I had started the second disc, but I still had, like, an hour left. And I had a friend coming over to hang out, and I was like, can you please, like, watch this with me. I need to watch it. Like, I need to know what happens. Like, I need to keep watching. And she, to her credit, did watch it with me. But, like, imagine being 12 and, like, picking up at, you know, the siege of Minas Tirith. Like, you don't know what the fuck's going on. And so she just was, like, making names for people. And, like, Aragorn will always be creamed corn. Sam, I think she was hungry. She must have been hungry because she was calling Samwise sandwich. She was calling Legolas Legolam. And she was calling Frodo Fruit Loop. So
there you go.
Oh, there was another one in there, too, that a more minor character that now I can't remember. Oh, she called Gollum Little Naked Guy.
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
Right.
No,
I mean, he's got a little loincloth. But yeah, so she like, and it was funny because the movie we had like rented for that night that then we watched later was RV, which is like,
oof.
What a cast. It's Robin Williams, JoJo, and I think Josh Hutcherson.
It's Whiplash, for sure.
It's not good. But there's a line where these like older teenagers are playing basketball with Josh Hutcherson and he's short and they call him Frodo because he's short. And we were like, oh my God, we never would have gotten that reference if we hadn't just watched Lord of the Rings. So it was like very fitting. And, yeah. Shout out to Sam. It was her birthday a couple days ago. But yeah, so that was like a very unique experience for the first time I watched it. But yes, I think it has some really epic moments, but I think overall it's not my favorite of the three.
Well, why don't we do that right now? Should we do a definitive trilogy rankings, Lord of the Rings trilogy rankings?
Sure.
Yeah.
I say definitive, but just watch review repeats,
No, it is definitive.
Okay.
We are the...
Also, for me, it's just...
I think this is my impression, obviously, based on, knowing Anna pretty well and Andrew having heard from you for now 3 Lord of the Rings movies. I have a feeling that we all feel the same way, but I don't know for a fact. I think we all have a solid, concrete number one, if nothing else.
And I think for me, the other 2 are in the same tier.
Okay. All right.
They're
So then
tied
we
for
may
second.
slightly diverge there, I guess, then.
Yeah. There are things I really, really like about, I think, I think Two Towers does benefit from the cuts and like the really focused nature of, kind of each of the 3 stories. And I think the 3 Hunters is just so fucking iconic. I think Helm's Deep is done really well and in some ways better than it's done in the book. And then I also like the March of the Ents. But I do feel that like it's weakened by the fact that things are cut out and then they're crammed into Return. And so Two Towers very much feels like a bridge movie. Mm-hmm. And I think it doesn't feel that way when you're reading the books because it ends on cliffhangers. It ends on 2 massive fucking cliffhangers. And I'm not a huge, I'm not somebody who's like, I love a cliffhanger. Like, it pisses me off. Fucking Loki season 1 finale. The biggest fight we've ever had was because I was pissed about it. Like, I don't like a cliffhanger. But I also think, like, it works in this because it's not a show. It's not, like, you're getting an answer. And I do think that Two Towers is a better movie if it ends with the cliffhangers. I do. I think it's a better movie. I think that's kind of what a second movie of a trilogy is supposed to be. I mean, think about Empire Strikes Back. Arguably the greatest second movie in a trilogy of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
And it ends on major fucking cliffhanger.
Gives you a reason to come back. Yeah.
Luke has just suffered a huge defeat. Han has been taken by literally that's how the Two Towers ends is Frodo was alive but taken by the enemy. I mean, that's Han Solo is alive but taken by the enemy. Like, I just think that the Two Towers is a better fucking movie if those scenes are in it, or at least to some extent. But there's these hopeful setup, and that's not what it is. That's not what it's supposed to be. And in that way, it kind of feels. I was noticing when we watched this that Sam and Frodo's story in both Two Towers and Return of the King picks up like the same way. We go from a flashback / dream sequence to Frodo and Sam chilling, and they're waking up and getting ready to camp. go on their little hike, the next round of their hike. And I think that's a little samey to me. And I don't think it needs to be that way. And I don't think it should have been that way. And so I do think that would, and I think Two Towers is the shortest of them, right? I mean, it's also the shortest book.
Of the movies?
Yeah.
Or is it I'd have to double check. I think they get longer.
Progressively longer as they go.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think both Two Towers could be helped by that. And I think obviously I think that Return of the King would be helped if it wasn't trying to cram so much in.
There's a lot.
I think there's so much detail. There's so much lore of Gondor that we kind of miss out on because of that. And I do think the extended versions make it better, but there's also so much.
It would kind of seem like if it ends in a bad spot for Frodo, but it ends with the victory in Isengard, it almost feels like you won a battle, but did you really win the war? Like you don't know the trajectory of the full story yet, and
right. Whereas Two Towers ends as if it could be the end of, like it's just it wraps everything up nicely in a neat little bow, which I don't need
nice
out of a second
victory.
movie.
Everyone gets to celebrate.
Right. I mean, I think we talked about this, but one of my biggest faults with Return of the King is that and to be fair, the book Return of the King has like 6 endings. It has so many endings.
Yeah, it's definitely apparent in the movie.
The end, the ending on Mount Doom, the ending in Minas Tirith, but then there's a wedding and a coronation, and then they go back, and there's like all of that. So like I get it that that's not necessarily like doable for a film, but these movies are not about the War of the Ring. They're about the role of the hobbits in the War of the Ring. That's what the Lord of the Rings is fucking about. Like, there's a reason that Aragorn and Arwen's story is in the fucking appendices. And I like that it's brought into the main movie here. I'm not mad about that. But the Return of the King is supposed to end in the Shire, and it's with a battle in the Shire.
What?
It's not just that these guys... Yes! Saruman does not die at Isengard.
What?
He and Wormtongue go and they fuck up the Shire. And then the 4 hobbits come back and they have to fix it. Yeah, and it's epic and it's cool. And the hobbits, I don't like that this movie has them go
terrible.
back as if nothing. No, it's great because in the movie, it's like Bilbo going back. Oh, he just had this whole big adventure and nobody knows about it. But the whole point of Sauron, the whole point of the War of the Ring is that it reaches every fucking corner of Middle Earth. There's a battle at Lorien. There's a battle at the Lonely Mountain. Like there's a battle at Dale. There's a battle everywhere. The woodland elves are having a battle. Like Sauron is attacking on all fucking fronts. And like our doom will be decided in Minas Tirith. But there are battles going on everywhere. And it even reached the Shire. And the whole point is that they go back and they've just had this. And this battle's fucking nothing to them because they've seen worse. And it shows that they're heroes. And they're heroes not just to the greater world, but to their own people too.
Oh, wow.
It's a big fucking
that's pretty
deal.
awesome.
And it's a big fucking deal for the Shire. And this just totally cuts that out.
Yeah, it does.
And it feels like it's like he got to the end and was like, shit, there's no time for it. We can't do it.
We can't get this to 5 hours. Come on. That would be an episode of the Watch Review Repeat podcast if it was 5 hours long.
Yeah. And so it's that's tough. Like I think that's a really, you think everything's good, Sauron's defeated, and it's like, fuck, we came home and everything's fucked up. But it's one last battle and it's smaller scale and it doesn't faze them. They're seen as warriors. They're not just seen as like those funny guys. The guy looks at them like, what are they doing in all their fancy clothes? No, they come back, shit's fucked up, and they have to save the day in Hobbiton too, and in the Shire. And so I think that's something that's just missing from making me feel like the story of the Hobbits is told completely.
It's almost a fundamentally different ending. I mean,
correct. Correct.
That they go through so much and they come back home and everyone's just like, oh,
nothing's changed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is very different. I do think that the way that Peter Jackson adapted it I don't think that the scouring of the Shire would have made a lot of sense as presented here.
Well, because
but
they
I think
killed
it's
Saruman.
Well, yes, obviously that's a big deal.
And
Wormtongue.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But I mean, if you go with the theatrical version and Saruman and Wormtongue are nowhere to be seen in Isengard, I still think that pacing-wise, and I think it feeds into the bigger thought of you've pulled so much from the Two Towers to put into the Return of the King.
There's no room
if you
for
had put that in there and you had a little bit of Rome and you think, all right, the worst is over, the evil is defeated, then and then you kind of come to that point, I think it could work. But I think as the way it was constructed in here, I mean, obviously it's constructed deliberately in a way that clearly Peter Jackson and company thought, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that because of the way they went about it, I think that would have been and one more thing that I don't think that would have worked. But I mean, it's interesting because this is the two things that I had up next to talk were trilogy rankings and kind of comparing the book versus the film trilogy.
I already did.
And it's fine because what it is you are the only one that has the authority to talk about that. Andrew and I have not read The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Hopefully we will one day. I think you have a nice copy, Andrew. Yeah. Obviously, I have a copy through you, Anna.
A copy?
Multiple copies and a few copies of The Hobbit, although I've read The Hobbit.
2, 3, 4, 5?
Oh,
five
wow.
I have a copy that you will allow me to put my greasy little hands on at some point.
Not my
maybe.
leather ones.
I see. That's what it is. There's one that's off. I knew there would be one off limits.
And not my Alan Lee ones.
I told you there would be. There are multiple off limits. Like I said, there's going to be at least one that I'm allowed
use
to
the Kindle one.
It is already on there, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, you're the only one that can really speak to this idea of how does the original book, volumes of the book, however you want to classify it, compare to the film trilogy. Because for us, we're movies first. So when you talk about and then the Shire gets fucking wrecked by Saruman and Wormtongue, and we're just like, oh no, and it's just like, well, I don't want that. Everything's nice and good. They go back and it's like a cute little moment of just being like, yeah, this fucking old fuck doesn't know what we did. We just saved the fucking world.
It's almost like it's almost like the Shire in the movies is like an idyllic dream. You know what I mean? It's like this is the place that we're fighting for the idea of the Shire. Because literally got the same.
And, Sam says the line of or Frodo says the line of we set out to save the Shire. And the movies make it seem like there was no danger in the Shire. Like the Shire didn't need saving.
Yeah.
And it very much did. Because a big part of this is like a harder nuance to get in the movies, but like part of why Saruman and Wormtongue are able to have such
what are those two doing?
Excuse me? I don't think that was in the book or the movies.
Oh boy.
Fan fiction.
Have so much
Figwit.
success in scouring the Shire is that all of these basically like the evil men from the south, the evil men from Isengard, they've been moving northwest. So they've been moving north and they've been moving into Bree, into the Shire. And we kind of find out about it because again, we don't in the movies, but in the books, we find out about it in Fellowship as early as Bree because there's discussion of this mean guy and how he's with the Southron who looks like a half goblin man, and he is. So yes, I think I do think that all of them are excellent movies. I think it is an excellent adaptation overall, but I think to me, Return of the King is the weakest adaptation, and I think because of that, pacing and the picking and choosing of what goes into Two Towers and Return of the King, those movies are both fundamentally weakened by those choices. And I think Fellowship, because it really, the only difference really is that Boromir doesn't die in Fellowship. He dies in Two Towers. So that, that was pretty big, I guess.
So even more was pulled from Two Towers.
Correct. From both ends. Yeah, from both ends.
Oof.
But I don't hate that decision. I think it fits better at the end of Fellowship. So I'm not mad about that.
Does the book does the Fellowship end with them leaving the wood elves?
No. So it ends with them under attack, but it follows Frodo and Sam across the river and into
Okay.
the Eamon Mule, and then it stops. That's where it ends with Frodo and Sam. And so we've left the others fighting the orcs, and we don't know what happens to them.
Okay.
And then it's at the beginning of Two Towers that it picks up with Aragorn and him figuring out what happened, him finding Boromir, him figuring out what happened, and yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you're sounds like a big fan of the books. You would recommend that people that like this film trilogy
100%.
pick it up and read it?
100%. I had read The Hobbit. Obviously, I'd seen that one scene or a bunch of scenes, whatever, and I read The Hobbit, and then I watched the movies. I watched the Lord of the Rings movies before I read the books. That was my starting point. And
so you were once at where we are.
Yes, correct.
Now.
I was once where you are, where I didn't know, the fuller story or whatever, and then I went on and I tried to read them. I think that year, shortly after, and I couldn't do it because 12-year-old me was a good reader, but I couldn't do it. And so I think it was the next summer. I think it was when I was 13 or almost 13 that I read them and really liked them. And I do recommend reading The Hobbit.
How
first.
many readings would you say you're up to about now, roughly? It doesn't have to be an exact count.
It's more than 10.
Is that double digits? Have we hit double digits yet?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because most years I have... let's see. That was when I was 13, 29 now. That's 16 years. I've probably read it at least a dozen times.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty solid.
Honestly, watching these made me want to read them again. So check in with me in January. I might be reading them again. Because I always want to be reading them.
They're good. I don't know about them being good, but the movies are good. It's a lot of shit.
The books are even better.
Yeah.
And you throw on that score from the movie while you read the book.
Stop it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So here's a fun fact at the tail end of our episode here.
Yes.
I knew you guys were big Lord of the Rings fans, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get Colton and Anna Fellowship of the Ring fucking vinyl.
How'd that go?
It did not go. It stopped very quickly.
Several $1,000s laying around.
Yeah, they're very, 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 very expensive.
They're very, very expensive.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. We have it's a different orchestra that has done
correct. It's the Prague, and they've done a few.
Prague did
and they're great. They do
selections
some great movie scores
from the Lord of the Rings. So we have that, and it was not $1,000. Thankfully, in
correct.
fact, it was like 25
it's funny
to 30.
Though, I remember when we first were buying that last year, and we were talking about it and stuff. We talked about how we were hoping they would put out a 20-year anniversary vinyl. We were hoping.
Here we are.
We were hoping that they would repress them and put them out.
25.
Because we're at 20
maybe
years.
25th.
They put out an anniversary edition for the book, which is what I bought, the one with the golden pages.
Yeah,
they put out an anniversary.
Stop it! Don't diminish my value. Okay? I'm happy about that.
Every 5 years. It's they're constantly putting out, which is why I have so fucking many, because they put out cool ones, and I'm like, I want to buy that.
Unless there's some sort of rights issues with repressing the vinyls,
I don't know why they haven't done it.
It feels like a really short-sighted decision to not just do it. Even if you did a Mondo type thing where it's 500, 1,000 or something, that's printing money. To me, that's just printing money. Vinyl is at such a height of compared to I don't know, even the past few years, it feels like all it does is just keep blowing up and up. So it just feels like, hopefully they do, because I would, even though we have
undoubtedly quickly
having the original Howard Shore,
the full
press,
sets.
it would be incredible.
Give me 4 LPs per movie. Give it to me. I would love that.
Complete recordings. Yeah, that would be awesome.
And we know they existed,
right? Yeah.
We know those didn't come out when the movies came out.
Yeah,
I just don't get it.
I don't know. We're not in charge. But to circle back around and then I guess kind of wind things down, wrap things up a little bit. So Anna, it sounds like your definitive rankings are The Fellowship of the Ring is number 1, and then you put The Two Towers and Return of the King alongside each other. They're 2. They're tied for 2.
Yes.
1 and 2 and 2.
Sure.
Okay. Andrew, do you agree with that or do you disagree?
I disagree.
Okay.
I think that, in my opinion, it's totally my opinion, man. that yes, Fellowship I think is my number one. Was my number one before.
I should say I'm indifferent to how the other two are ranked.
That's fair.
I'm sure there probably is a way to argue for one or the other, but to me, it's like the difference between them is not that big.
Sure. Yeah.
In terms of quality, whereas I think Fellowship is significantly better than both. Sorry,
and I agree with Anna too, with that word significantly. I think Fellowship is I think it's a much more nuanced movie. I think that the way that it sows the seeds of adventure and the actual Fellowship itself, like the way that they develop all of these characters into one cohesive unit by the end of the movie, and then the death of two of them and the corruption that the ring starts to have on like the group itself and starts to tear it apart. By the end of the movie, the Fellowship's torn apart. I think it's huge. I think it's really good. It makes it super impactful. I think it does an awesome job of, I think it does an awesome job of, world building, and just setting the pace. You know what I mean? Just sets the pace in a very good way. I think you could start this movie off or set the series off and it could be really rough, right? I mean, it did start it off with a lot of exposition, but it was well done. It was really well done. And it just, everything that happened in Fellowship felt earned. Not that the other stuff doesn't feel earned either, but it felt more cohesive, I think, than the other books did, or not the other books, the other movies did probably by nature of all the characters are together, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, they're torn apart and, you know, in the other two movies. But, anyways, second movie, I think, is Fellowship or Return of the King. I think Return of the King, okay. Return of the King is a movie composed of a lot of big moments. There's a lot of big moments that happen in it. But I think that where it really comes, where the quality really shines in Return of the King is how they're able to draw from the first movie so effectively. They're able to draw on the motifs we talked about a couple times with all the characters and all the, you know, all the themes and stuff, and they just brought it full circle in a big way. Like Anna said, it's a movie made up of a dozen endings, which at the time, like going through it, it definitely feels like a dozen endings, and you're like, oh god, here's another one. But by the time you get over the fact that, oh, here's another one, it ends so strong that you don't care that it was another ending. You know what I mean? You forget that this is the third ending, or the fourth ending. With the exception of the pillow fight, I could have probably done without the pillow fight.
Just shorten it. Just shorten it is how I feel about it.
God,
Fucking pillow fight.
And then he fully fucking forgets. Like,
and then thirdly is the Two Towers.
Mm.
Like, if you wanted to have like a 6-hour movie, you could have just had a 6-hour movie, you know, and just made 2 movies. Or do you make 4 movies because you pulled so much out? You pulled so much out of the Two Towers. You know,
3 or 6. 3 or 6.
3 or 6, she says. You know, and so I feel like Two Towers is it just feels thin. It feels thin compared to the other movies, in my opinion. You know, just I remember Worm Tongue. That's the fucking thing I remember about.
Okay, yeah, sure.
About the second movie. You know,
Helm's fucking Deep.
Helm's
man.
Deep, yeah. Come on.
Helm's Deep was cool. Like the cool part about Helm's Deep for me was when the elves came in.
Yeah,
they're freaking out, and the elves come in, and they're total fucking bosses.
Doesn't happen. Not real. It doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen?
Totally
still real. It's just a different iteration of the story. That's all.
Well, it was cool. That was in my
battle.
The battle was okay. It was an okay battle for me. It didn't. The other battles in Return of the King, were and not only were they serviceable battles, but we got 3 hours. We got a bunch of fucking battles. We got a bunch of battles.
A movie of battles.
Yeah, so if it's about battles, I gotta say, I like the fucking battles in Return of the King. They're totally fine, with the exception of the fucking dead guys. Yeah, I think there's pretty good margins between the three movies. But I don't want that to sound like the other two movies aside from Fellowship are bad, because they're not. I just think Fellowship is great. Like, all of the movies are in the stratosphere, right? They're all fucking way up there. They're pinnacle filmmaking. They're pinnacle epic movies. They're just the epitome of epic filmmaking. I mean, they're really just incredible. It's an incredible trilogy. Yeah. But forced to pick between the three, I think that the differences between the three are stark. And I think it's, yeah, that's like my opinion. So, where are you at? What's your opinion?
It is indeed just like your opinion, man.
Who cares? Who cares what Colton thinks? Just kidding.
I guess I'm probably actually somewhere between the two of you, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Fellowship is indeed my favorite. There's just
well, are we talking about favorites or best?
I guess I was thinking about favorites, but I think it might also be the best, an objective thing. Yeah. I mean, to me, I do think that The Return of the King got the awards because it was the last one. It was kind of the last chance to.
Those were awards for the entire.
And it was awards for the entire trilogy, almost, right? Yeah, totally. I agree with that. But I will say, I mean, it's for Fellowship specifically, it just has such a peaceful, idyllic nature to it until it kind of ramps up and gets serious. And in those moments really, really hit home. Like Gandalf's death, the Balrog is still the coolest fucking thing. Building to the creation of the Fellowship, the relatively quick dissolution of the Fellowship. At that point, it's just, I don't know. I think that it's just such a great piece of world building. I think to echo at least what I think Andrew has said, probably everyone at some point. But it really is as close to perfect as it can be in terms of just setting these characters up, setting the whole story up, setting the stakes of this world up. It's just so well done. For me, I do think The Return of the King is also my number 2 of 3. But I would say the margin between The Return of the King and The Two Towers is not big. It's not big for me. I think that both of them do things really, really well. And I think they do different things really, really well. I mean, I think that Return of the King has so much stuffed into it. I don't think it's overstuffed necessarily. And again, obviously, I'm coming into it as someone that doesn't know what the delineation is between what should be in one book versus another book, that sort of thing. But it's a long fucking movie, and it feels long, and it's just because there's so much in it. And I think that those moments really, really hit hard. I mean, this most recent watch for me, I got emotional with a lot of the stuff that was happening, and a lot of that, I'm sure, is the Howard Shore score driving it. But again, Eowyn, plunging her sword into the Witch King's fucking face was just awesome.
And fun fact in the books, he's just a floating crown with red eyes.
That's what?
I think that was a good change for the visual representation in the movie. Yes,
I agree.
The ring wraith, I guess, with a helmet on or whatever, and a wyvern thing. Yeah, I don't know. It just there's just so many good moments, and I think at the end of the day, what it is it's hard to its middle chapter. I mean, I guess we did talk about Star Wars, and Empire is absolutely better than Return of the Jedi, so it's definitely possible to make a middle chapter better than your capper. And I guess we did bring up the fact that a lot of times the third films in a trilogy don't really seem to always execute or deliver in the most satisfying way. But I guess maybe the thing is, when it does, it's kind of hard to top that. You know what I mean? Fellowship does, obviously, but when you're comparing Return versus Two Towers specifically, it's I don't know, man. Return has it has 19 endings, but it has just so many great climactic moments that just feel so epic and awesome. And it's like, man, if it's like 2 straight hours, like once it kind of hits and starts like really, once the dominoes start falling, it's just like, I don't know, it's just so many things that are just so awesome and satisfying and rewarding for the journey that you've been on to that point, compared to the Two Towers, which has like little mini moments like that. Like Helm's Deep is fucking awesome. I unabashedly think it's incredible. But on the whole, the Two Towers doesn't offer as many satisfying big moments, and almost that's probably why I think Return weighs a little bit above it for me. Is just it just has more of those moments, and it almost feels like it's cheating, because it's like, yeah, it's the end, like it should have those, but it should have the payoffs that a middle chapter doesn't necessarily have. But I think the things that the Two Towers does do better are the pacing in general. I think is a little, I mean, to me, I think it's a little sharper there. I think the Rohan stuff, I think is some of the best stuff. I think setting up that the I guess kingdom, or I don't know how you would classify it. Anna can help me there. Is Rohan a kingdom or a nation or a realm, or I don't know what the proper nomenclature is there, but to me, whatever, it's fine.
I don't know.
I don't know. Peoples, there are peoples.
Yeah, they're here.
But that stuff to me is so well handled, and I think more so. I think it's handled better than Gondor is handled,
Agreed.
and Return of the King is.
Yes.
To put those two in comparison with each other. So I don't know. Yeah, it's. I'll co-sign with Andrew in saying, these are epic films. All of them are incredible. There's not a bad one in the bunch. There's just ones that you like better than others, and I don't think there's a wrong answer unless it's not Fellowship, but but they're all really, really fucking good, at the end of the day. So there's that. So I have one last section. Before we get there, I have to ask Anna the question, because we brought it up earlier. What the fuck's going on with the Mouth of Sauron?
Yeah, what
is
the
that
fuck's
a thing
that?
in the book? We grappled with this question, or I was just like, let me answer. I'm like, you know what? I actually don't know, and I'm going to defer on that.
Give me 1 minute.
Oh, she's consulting the books. Oh, she's cheating. She's cheating and consulting the book.
I'm not cheating.
Citation needed.
I'm not cheating.
Citation needed for the Mouth of Sauron.
The description
Of his mouth.
And how big it is.
That's.
He kind of reminded me of a what the fuck was that movie? What was that movie where the guy had the big metal pyramid on his head, big sword, and then like barbed wire coming out of the vagina?
Silent Hill?
Yeah. Remember that?
Yeah. Pyramid Head, man.
It kind of reminds me of something like that. It reminds me of Silent Hill a little bit.
Are
It's
you
a little
ready?
demented. All right, the Mouth of Sauron, what is it?
There rode a tall and evil shape mounted upon a black horse, if horse it was, for it was huge and hideous, and its face was a oh, sorry, that's all about the horse. The rider. I think that might be what
The whole
I think
paragraph
that might
about
be
the
what
horse,
went
and
wrong. Is that this someone said, "Go look at this page," and somebody read the description of the horse and thought that was
It's got the biggest mouth you ever fucking saw.
They
They even gave it horse teeth.
The rider was robed all in black, and black was his lofty helm. Yet this was no ring wraith, but a living man. The lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr he was, and his name is remembered in no tale, for he himself had forgotten it. And he said, I am the Mouth of Sauron. But it was told that he was a renegade who came of the race of those that are named the Black Númenóreans, for they established their dwellings in Middle-earth during the years of Sauron's domination, and they worshipped him, being enamored of evil knowledge. And that's it.
So he's just
that's all we get.
So he's a big horse mouth man.
However, he does have eyes that you can see, and Aragorn holds his eyes.
So he cuts them out of his fucking face.
Yes, and honestly, a lot of the dialogue is the same. But the whole point is that he's just a guy. He's a mortal man, or maybe not mortal, but he's,
just a dude.
a corrupted
dude. He's just a
just a bad
corrupted
dude.
dude. Correct. And he is not supposed to have he's
horse
the
teeth.
mouth of Sauron because he speaks for Sauron. He doesn't actually have
Big old fucking mouth.
big old fucking mouth and no
chompers.
fucking eyes.
Have you seen the
when he goes and shows all his teeth. He's also like, he's giving drag queen.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know if that's
yeah.
supposed to, but like he's giving drag queen. Like just the way
Good
he
stuff.
like, like he just, I don't know.
Very dramatic. Very dramatic.
Very.
All right. Well, I had to
Beautiful
ask because I
gowns,
wanted to
beautiful
close the loop. But the last thing that we'll say, and then it's time to wrap everything up and say goodbye to the Lord of the Rings forever. Maybe, maybe not.
All
Is
right, wrap it the
because
fuck up.
this is not the end of the Peter Jackson iteration of the Lord of the Rings. Obviously, the book is there. You can go read it. Hey, that's all good. But what else could you do? You could watch the Hobbit trilogy, of course. You
Why
could
would
do
anyone
that.
fucking do
Could
that?
do that. It is part of this
Why
world.
would anyone fucking do that?
You could play a couple video games. There are adaptations, I think, of the movies, but you could play the Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War. Those are connected to the movie universe as well. And next year, just next year, we're going to be getting an animated prequel movie called The War of the Rohirrim, which is basically, I think, 261 years before the events of the Two Towers. It's going to tell the story of Helm Hammerhand, a legendary king of Rohan, who must defend against an army of Dunlendings. And Brian Cox is voicing him. Miranda Otto is back, I assume, as some sort of narrator.
She is. She's narrating as Eowyn.
is narrating kind of the events of this. And
Okay.
so we're getting a little fucking Lord of the Rings anime shit next year. Quite literally about a year. December 13th is when this is dated for currently. So yeah. You know, there's always more Lord of the Rings. And, you know, of course, there's the Rings of Power Season 2 coming around at some point, but that's not strictly tied to the
Correct.
Peter Jackson story. Visually, certainly some inspiration, but not literally tied to it. So anyway, that's the Lord of the Rings, I guess. You know, I think that's
Wow.
probably about it. We did it. We did the thing. We talked about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We've been here a long time, but we did it.
Epic podcast for some epic movies, man.
That's the way to do it. It's the only way to do it. It's the only appropriate way to do it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up unless Anna wants to narrate the entirety of the Lord of the Rings for us, Andy Serkis style. No? No takers?
No, but I will say that it ends the same way as the book, which is that Sam arrives back and says, "Well, I'm back."
There you go. Peter Jackson got one thing right about adapting
he got
the
a
book.
lot right. Shut the fuck up. He got a lot right.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. We're on Patreon at patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. If you want to chip in $2 a month, you can get early access to all of our regular episodes, but more importantly, for something like this, you can get timed exclusive access to our next bonus episode. Now, I can't say that it's going to be the Lord of the Rings because there isn't another one to talk about yet, but there are plenty of other epics out there. There are other things that we can talk about if we want to go away from epics when we get into 2024. Who's to say? But certainly we encourage everyone to support us that way, if you can. Our website's watchreviewrepeat.com. We are on a lot of the socials. We're on Twitter at W.R.R. Pod. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/watchreviewrepeat. We are on Instagram at watchreviewrepeat. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, if you've got something to say,
I've got a suggestion.
send it our way.
Stop using the website formerly known as Twitter. It's time.
X.
That shit's dying.
X.
Just
Well,
give it up.
I thought it was going to implode about 6 months ago, and it never actually happened, and that was kind of
dying
sad.
a slow death.
Yeah, well,
It was like the Rapture happened, and now it's just the
well, we
last
could
dregs of
go on
humanity
Threads
are
or Blue
killing each
Sky
other
if we get an invite, or
Threads
That's
is
true.
bad.
Whatever.
I have invite codes if anyone wants them for Blue Sky.
maybe we'll do that.
I've never
Not
heard
like
of Blue
anyone
Sky.
follows us on Twitter anyway, so it'll be fine.
Blue Sky's just like made by the people who made Twitter.
Or
It's,
what's
like,
the other one? It's like a dinosaur thing.
Mastodon.
Mastodon. Is
Yeah,
that a thing
that's
anymore?
that's more like Discord, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like
All right.
servers. And
Well, anyway,
makes no sense.
look, Gmail still exists, so if you've got something to say, you can
Email.
send it to our Gmail account.
Oh my God, I heard someone on the bus.
watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com.
I heard somebody on the bus the other day, like checking their email, and it was the fucking AOL sound, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
There we go.
Hey,
It's coming
If
back.
AOL is still
AOL.
kicking, Gmail is still kicking. Let's put it that way.
Jesus.
So it's not antiquated or the Rapture or whatever was going on there. So if you got thought about, if you want to talk the Lord of the Rings, send us your rankings, your thoughts,
It's funny,
whatever,
I think-
your book versus movie differences, etc. If you have an AOL account you want to send it from, that's fine. It'll probably get through somehow.
Or if you want to talk about the Lord and the Rapture, we can do that too. We can talk about that stuff too.
You can certainly send that to us. I can't guarantee
I say the
it'll
Rapture,
make it.
but I picture the movie This Is the End. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our intro and outro tracks, Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Before I say goodbye to everyone, I'm going to say thank you very much to Anna for coming on.
Thank you.
Dropping some massive Lord of the Rings knowledge on us two uneducated folks. So we appreciate it.
Read the fucking books.
It is on a to-do list. We will do it. I will do it.
I don't know what we're doing next. It's Christmas time. It's almost New Year's. So this is our last bonus episode of 2023. I can say that with certainty. So I don't know what we're going to get to next. I don't know what our next regular episode is going to be. So I'm just going to say happy holidays to all, and
all of good night.
I guess we'll catch you in the new year.
Merry Chrysler.
Merry Chrysler.
And happy Honda days.
All right, Andrew, you got to say the thing.
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Laters on the Menjay.
Fuck you, Hans Zimmer. Howard Shore is better.